Chapter 69. Chu Fengmian could tell that Lin Qingfeng was relying on this jade talisman for his confidence. Today, Chu Fengmian was going to break his reliance and wake him up. "Can you break this jade talisman?" Lin Qingfeng said with disdain. This jade talisman had helped him through countless crises. No matter what kind of crisis it was, it could always turn it into safety. He did not believe that Chu Fengmian had the ability to break this jade talisman. However, in the next second, a crisp sound rang out. The barrier in front of Lin Qingfeng was completely shattered. At the same time, the jade talisman hanging on his neck was shattered into pieces. "My jade talisman! How is this possible?" Lin Qingfeng's face was lifeless. The jade talisman that he had always relied on was now broken so easily by Chu Fengmian. "Now, I'll give you two options. Submit to me and become my slave, just like your father. Then, I'll let you live." Chu Fengmian looked coldly at Lin Qingfeng. "Little bastard. Don't even think about it." Before Lin Qingfeng could finish his sentence, his voice came to an abrupt halt. His neck was easily broken by Chu Fengmian. He fell to the ground, dead. "If you don't submit, only death awaits you. What about you?" Chu Fengmian turned his head and looked at the disciples of the Lin mansion. "We submit." All the disciples of the Lin mansion said at the same time and knelt on the ground. These disciples of the Lin mansion had already witnessed Chu Fengmian's methods. The Lin mansion master had already become Chu Fengmian's servant. The second elder had been tied up by Chu Fengmian, and Lin Qingfeng had already died in Chu Fengmian's hands. Even if they wanted to resist, they did not have the courage to do so. They knew Chu Fengmian's methods. If he wanted to kill, he would kill without any hesitation. "Okay." Chu Fengmian calmed down and understood. The matter of the Lin mansion was finally going to be resolved. Chu Fengmian had fulfilled the promise of this body in his previous life. "Uncle Lin, this way." Chu Fengmian looked at the third elder and said calmly. The two of them walked into the biggest palace of the Lin mansion. This used to be the mansion master's palace, but now it belonged to Chu Fengmian. "Uncle Lin, what do you want to ask?" Chu Fengmian sat on the chair and looked at the third elder beside him and asked. The third elder looked hesitant, as if he had something to say. He wanted to ask something. "Fengmian, are you really not possessed by a demon?" The third elder glanced at Chu Fengmian and said in a daze. This made Chu Fengmian feel somewhat amused. He did not expect the third elder who had always trusted him to have such doubts. However, it was no wonder that Chu Fengmian's strength had progressed so fast that it didn't seem like something a person or martial artist could achieve. "If I am possessed demon-possessed to have a demon to, I would not to be. Demon do not to me too." Chu Fengmian said. I to the Lin. To the Chu to be to the Lin, to. To was the to him, there, to appear to be, there were to the appear to be the appear to be to appear to be to Lin to himself, to the of many to s. SOS. There was nothing wrong with Chu Fengmian's words. Chu Fengmian's own secrets were truly too shocking. If he told the third elder, he was afraid that the third elder would bring about a fatal disaster. Sometimes, it was a good thing to know less. To think that you would come across an ancient cave. Such a fortuitous encounter is indeed shocking. Although the third elder had already guessed it, he was still shocked when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He could guess that Chu Fengmian's strength could only be increased by a huge fortuitous encounter other than being possessed by a demon. "Fengmian, it seems that you are also a person of great luck. To be able to obtain a fortuitous encounter, your future achievements will also be limitless." The third elder sighed. He was worried that Chu Fengmian would be a good-for-nothing. But now, Chu Fengmian's performance made him feel gratified. In the future, under your leadership, the Lin mansion will develop better and better. Regarding this matter, Uncle Lin, from now on, you will be the mansion master of Lin mansion. Chu Fengmian suddenly said. "I am not good at managing the Lin mansion. Uncle Lin, I will leave the martial forest city in the future. The position of the mansion master of the Lin Mansion will be passed to Uncle Lin. Being the mansion master of the Lin Mansion was actually the wish of this body. Since it had been realized, Chu Fengmian had no intention of staying in the Lin Mansion. The 9 regions were prosperous. Even if Chu Fengmian was strong enough to be a king in the martial forest city, he was still a frog at the bottom of the well. Only by going to a more prosperous region could he train himself. "You are leaving?" the third elder asked. There was not much surprise in his voice. He had guessed that with Chu Fengmian's current strength and talent, it was almost impossible for him to stay in the Lin Mansion. The water in the Lin Mansion was too small for Chu Fengmian. If Chu Fengmian wanted to become a true expert, he could not stay in the Lin Mansion forever. "That's right. I plan to go to the extreme capital city and join the Wuxing Academy," Chu Fengmian said. The number 1 force in the Wuxing nation was the Wuxing Academy. If Chu Fengmian wanted to improve himself, he could only join the Wuxing Academy. "Indeed." The third elder nodded his head. "With your strength, it won't be a problem for you to join the Wuxing Academy. However, there are countless disciples in the Lin Mansion who are ready to make a move. It won't be easy to manage them," the third elder said with a frown. Although everyone in the Lin Mansion had submitted to Chu Fengmian on the surface, there were still many disciples who were unwilling to accept Chu Fengmian. On the surface, they had submitted to Chu Fengmian because of the situation. Many of them were still thinking that 3 days later, when the great elder of the Lin Mansion returned, he could still suppress and deal with Chu Fengmian. Under such circumstances, it would be difficult for the third elder to convince the masses. 3 days later, everything will be clear," Chu Fengmian said calmly. 3 days later, when he completely defeated the great elder of the Lin Mansion, no one in the Lin Mansion would dare to go against Chu Fengmian. "This Lin Jingshan has already been sealed by me. Now, I will hand the seal over to Uncle Lin. Uncle Lin, you will be in control of the Lin Jingshan from now on." Chu Fengmian looked at the third elder and suddenly pointed his finger at the third elder's forehead. A technique appeared in the third elder's mind. It was the technique to control the heavenly death seal. With another Divine Sea Realm martial artist holding the fort, the disciples of the Lin Mansion would not be able to make a scene. "I will go into seclusion for 3 days. 3 days later, I will come out." Chapter 70. 3 days later. Outside the martial Linlin city, a giant crane rushed into the city without a care for the guards. 2 old men stood on the back of the crane. Both of them had white hair and a youthful face. One of them was arrogant. Although he was old, he was even more arrogant than the younger ones. His brows were sharp, and his every move carried the spirit of the 5 elements. He was the Lin Mansion's great elder, Lin Wujuan, a martial artist at the 3rd level of the Divine Sea Realm. The person standing behind Lin Wujuan was short and wore a black robe. Beside him, a strong smell of blood could be clearly seen. He was the Lin Mansion's honored elder. Deng Tuesday Lin Wujuan and Deng Tu were the pinnacle of the Lin Mansion's combat strength. They were also the true foundation of the Lin Mansion. 2 Divine Sea Realm martial artists were enough to make the Lin Mansion status in the 13 southwestern cities. The 2 of them rode on the crane and landed in front of the Lin Mansion's main gate. "What's going on?" As soon as the 2 of them landed, they looked at the Lin Mansion's main gate and frowned when they saw the few Lin Mansion disciples. Today was the day they returned to the Lin Mansion, but no one in the Lin Mansion had any intention of welcoming them. "Ask Lin Jingshan to come out." "What the hell is he doing?" Deng Tu, who was standing at the side, shouted angrily at a Lin Mansion disciple. Deng Tu used to be a bandit when he was young. He only joined the Lin Mansion later on and became their honored elder. His blood chi was left behind after he had killed countless people back then. It seems like he doesn't want to be the Lin Mansion's mansion master anymore. "Oh? Can he be the Lin Mansion's mansion master?" "Deng Tu, who do you think you are? How dare you say that?" A cold voice suddenly sounded. Lin Jingshan slowly walked out from the Lin Mansion. His expression was cold, and he showed no fear in the face of the 2 Lin Mansion's ancestors. Now that Chu Fengmian had placed the Heaven Death Seal on Lin Jingshan, his only master was Chu Fengmian. As for the others, Lin Jingshan was not afraid of them. Now that Lin Jingshan knew Chu Fengmian's strength, he was not afraid of the two Lin Mansion's ancestors. What? Lin Jingshan, it seems like your wings have hardened. Or have you forgotten who the real owner of the Lin Mansion is after the two of us left the Lin Mansion for so many years? Dang Tu walked up and pointed at Lin Jingshan angrily. As a consecrated elder of the Lin Mansion, he had a high status and could be said to be the patriarch of the entire Lin Mansion. In his eyes, Lin Jingshan was nothing more than a junior, yet he dared to speak to him in such a manner. Lin Jingshan, don't think that I won't dare to touch you just because you're the Lin clan's mansion master. He could have as many mansion masters as he wanted. Today, this old man wants to see what capabilities you have. Dang Tu yelled angrily as his hands reached out to grab Yi Futian. Dang Tu's hands were extremely red. They were a pair of bloody hands. This pair of bloody hands was Dang Tu's signature move. Bloody Hands Dang Tu was an existence feared by everyone in the 13 southwestern cities. According to legend, this pair of bloody hands was refined by Dang Tu after he killed several thousand martial artists and soaked in their blood. It was incomparably vicious. Once an ordinary warrior was caught, their blood would be sucked dry. It was an extremely vicious demonic art. With this claw, even if Lin Jingshan didn't die, he would be seriously injured. How dare you? How dare these two old men be so arrogant in the Lin Mansion? Suddenly, a cold snort came out. What followed was a fierce fist wind. The power of this fist wind is so strong that it immediately smashes towards Dang Tu's boom. Dang Tu's bloody hands were completely shattered by this punch. As a Divine Sea Realm martial artist, Dang Tu's hands were actually crippled by this punch. Who is it? Lin Wujuan also looked around. He didn't expect such a terrifying expert to appear in the Lin Mansion. To be able to cripple Dang Tu with one move, this kind of power could only be possessed by a martial artist above the third level of the Divine Sea Realm. As he looked around, a young figure had already slowly walked out of the Lin Mansion. Young master. Lin Jingshan looked at Chu Fengmian who was walking over and said respectfully. Young master? Hearing this name, Lin Wujuan suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian. This name was definitely not ordinary. Now, Lin Jingshan's change was obviously related to Chu Fengmian. Sir, where are you from? What is your relationship with the Lin Mansion? Lin Wujuan looked at Chu Fengmian and asked cautiously. Chu Fengmian was able to cripple Dang Tu's bloody hands with one punch. This kind of strength was not below him. Even if Lin Wujuan was arrogant, he didn't dare to underestimate such an opponent. Especially in the 13 southwest cities, warriors of the Divine Sea Realm were rare. Since when did such a young warrior of the Divine Sea Realm appear? Second Elder, come out and meet the person you've been waiting for. Chu Fengmian didn't answer Lin Wujuan's question, but said indifferently. Lin Jingshan grabbed a tied-up old man from the side and threw him to the side. Lin Su? Seeing the second elder thrown on the ground, Lin Wujuan's face changed. He didn't expect that when he returned to the Lin Mansion, it would be turned upside down. Even the second elder Lin Su became a prisoner. First elder. When Lin Su saw Lin Wujuan, it was as if he saw the last glimmer of hope. His originally tired body actually had some strength, and he shouted loudly. First elder, this kid is from the family Chu. He killed the fourth elder, the fifth elder, and the others, and used demonic arts to control the mansion master. Take over the Lin Mansion. You must kill him. What did you say? Lin Wujuan was stunned, and then his face was full of anger. You are the little bastard of the family Chu. Little bastard? Is this something you can say? How dare you? Chu Fengmian frowned and flew into a rage. His eyes showed some murderous intent. He suddenly attacked, and with a flash of his figure, he rushed to Lin Wujuan's side. It was so fast that Lin Wujuan couldn't react for a moment. But after all, he was also a martial artist at the third level of the Divine Sea Realm. He moved his mind, and an earth wall condensed in front of him. A divine sea realm martial artist had the ability to condense the spirits of the 5 elements. This Lin Wujuan was obviously much stronger than Lin Jingshan. But even so, Chu Fengmian was not afraid at all. Dragon fighting in the wild. Chu Fengmian's eyes exploded with fighting spirit, and his ancient battle dragon bloodline was fully activated. A fist smashed toward Lin Wujuan. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The earth wall was shattered under Chu Fengmian's fist. What? Chapter 71. With his cultivation at the 3rd level of the Divine Sea Realm, the wall he condensed was probably harder than steel. But under Chu Fengmian's fist wind, it actually shattered. The wanton fist wind had already smashed into his body, forcing him back dozens of steps. It was a simple punch, but the aftermath was enough to force Lin Wujuan back dozens of steps. Could it be that even the Lin Mansion's Great Elder is no match for Chu Fengmian? Chu Fengmian is only 20 years old. How can he be so terrifying? Monster! Many Lin Mansion disciples were watching from afar. The Lin Mansion's Great Elder was their last hope. But after this move, countless people were disappointed. Lin Wujuan, who was at the 3rd level of the Divine Sea Realm, was still easily forced back by Chu Fengmian. Hearing the crowd's discussion, Lin Wujuan's face became stiff. He also didn't expect that he would be forced to this point by a junior. Chu Fengmian, I admit that you do have some strength, but too arrogant at such a young age will only bring about your own destruction. Lin Wujuan's body suddenly burst out with a biting cold spiritual energy. This was Lin Wujuan's true anger. He no longer suppressed his spiritual energy and burst out with all his strength. Lin Wujuan's strength was not below the martial flame hall's hall master. Arrogant? Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a bit of a sneer. So what if he was arrogant? In this Lin Mansion, Chu Fengmian was indeed qualified to be arrogant. Lin Wujuan, I'll give you a chance. Submit to me, and you will still be the Lin Mansion's Great Elder. Chu Fengmian looked at Lin Wujuan with a cold smile. If he wanted to truly become the master of the Lin Mansion and control it, he naturally had to establish an invincible prestige. Now, these Lin Mansion disciples were still scheming. Now, Chu Fengmian had subdued Lin Wujuan so that they wouldn't dare to have any thoughts of rebellion. He had to stabilize everything before handing over the Lin Mansion to the 3rd Elder. What? Lin Wujuan's face changed greatly. This sentence was simply a great insult to him. He was the Lin Mansion's Great Elder, a high and mighty figure in the Lin Mansion. Now that he had to submit to Chu Fengmian, it was more humiliating than death. Humph! Impossible! Lin Wujuan sneered. Really? Since that's the case, don't blame me. The corners of Chu Fengmian's mouth curled up into a cold smile. A black mark suddenly condensed in the center of his palm. The heavenly death seal was a restriction that could control the life of a martial artist. The all-heaven death seal was not only able to control a warrior's life like an ordinary seal, but it could also control their minds, making them submit completely in their hearts, as if they had converted. For example, Lin Jingshan had completely submitted to Chu Fengmian. His heart was loyal and devoted, and he didn't dare to have any thoughts of rebellion. Since the Great Elder was unwilling to submit, Chu Fengmian didn't want to waste words with him. Death to all heavens! Come under my control! Chu Fengmian roared, and the heavenly death seal rushed toward Lin Wujuan and suddenly struck out. This is a restriction? Are you planning to use restrictions to control me? Lin Wujuan originally thought that he would rather die than submit to Chu Fengmian. But the moment he saw the restriction in Chu Fengmian's palm, his expression completely changed. If he were to be hit by this restriction, he would probably be even more miserable than a servant, and he wouldn't even have his own thoughts. From the inside out, he would become Chu Fengmian's slave. Chu Fengmian, I am willing to submit. Lin Wujuan hurriedly shouted. If he were to really be hit by this restriction, it would be much more uncomfortable than death. You want to submit now? It's too late. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a bit of coldness. He had already given Lin Wujuan a chance. Since Lin Wujuan didn't know how to cherish it, Chu Fengmian wouldn't give him a second chance. In the future, you will stay in the Lin mansion and be a guardian. Chu Fengmian's hands moved, and suddenly, the all-heaven death seal had already struck toward Lin Wujuan's forehead. Lin Wujuan still wanted to resist, but in front of Chu Fengmian's power, his resistance was firmly suppressed by Chu Fengmian. He couldn't move at all. Seal! Chu Fengmian indifferently spat out a word. On Lin Wujuan's forehead, the same black pattern condensed, and the hostility in his eyes disappeared. The enmity on his face disappeared in an instant. He looked at Chu Fengmian with a respectful expression. Young master. Lin Wujuan looked at Chu Fengmian and knelt down. I just offended master. Please forgive me, young master. It's okay. In the future, you will be stationed in the Lin mansion and protect the safety of the Lin mansion. As the Lin mansion's great elder, this is what you should do. Yes. Lin Wujuan nodded and respectfully stood to the side. Looking at Lin Wujuan, who was angry just a moment ago, suddenly become like this, the surrounding Lin mansion disciples all trembled. The all-heaven death seal was a bit too terrifying. Not only could it control a person's life, but it could also control a warrior's mind. They weren't afraid of being controlled. After all, at most, they would die. But if their mind was controlled, it would be worse than death. It was 10,000 times more miserable than being a slave. Plop. Several Lin mansion disciples had already knelt down. They didn't want to resist Chu Fengmian and be affected by the all-heaven death seal, so they voluntarily surrendered. We are willing to surrender. Chu Fengmian's strength was not something they could resist. In the 13 southwestern cities, he was almost invincible. Resisting Chu Fengmian was no different from courting death. We are willing to surrender. The remaining Lin mansion disciples also recovered from their shock and knelt down. None of the countless Lin mansion disciples present dared to stand. In the entire Lin mansion, there was no one who refused to surrender. Very well. Chu Fengmian nodded and said, I promise that the Lin mansion will be the lord of the 13 southwestern cities in the future. In the future, no one in the 13 southwestern cities will be a match for the Lin mansion. While Chu Fengmian was pressuring them, he also made a promise. If he kept pressuring them, the Lin mansion would still have thoughts of rebelling. But if he gave them enough benefits, they would definitely surrender from the bottom of their hearts. Yes. Countless Lin mansion disciples shouted excitedly, as if they could already see the day when the Lin mansion stood proudly in the 13 southwestern cities. If it was someone else who said this, the Lin mansion disciples might not believe it, but it was Chu Fengmian who said it. Chu Fengmian's strength was almost invincible in the Divine Sea realm. In the 13 southwestern cities, he could be called the #1 expert. Chapter 72. Uncle Lin, I'll be leaving the Lin mansion for a long time. From now on, I'll have to rely on you to take care of the Lin mansion. In the palace, Chu Fengmian was sitting opposite the third elder. Now that the Lin mansion had been unified, there was no need for Chu Fengmian to stay. Who would have thought that in just 3 short months, there would be such a huge change? The third elder sighed as well. 3 months ago, no one would have thought that Chu Fengmian, the trash of the Lin mansion, would unify the Lin mansion. Now that the Lin mansion had been unified, the third elder couldn't believe it. All right, I'm getting on in years. I'll stay and take care of the Lin mansion. The third elder smiled faintly. Now that the Lin mansion was guarded by 2 Divine Sea Realm warriors, there weren't many forces that dared to touch the Lin mansion. Although the third patriarch was not powerful, he was able to control 2 Spirit Sea Realm warriors. It was more than enough for him to manage the Lin mansion. Given your strength, it is indeed time for you to go out and explore. The 13 southwestern cities are a small place after all. They don't even have a wind-controlling realm martial artist. This old man has also ventured out when I was young. The prosperity of the outside world belongs to you young people. The third elder sighed. With Chu Fengmian's strength, it was impossible for him to stay in the Lin mansion. Uncle Lin, I have 2 cultivation techniques that I got from the ancient cave mansion. I'll give them to you now. Chu Fengmian hesitated for a while, then took out 2 jade slips and gave them to the third elder. One of them is called the agility technique. It's a superior profound level cultivation technique. It's much better than the ones in the Lin Mansion. You can distribute it to the disciples. The other one is called the Cloud Sea Ice Emperor technique. It's a superior earth-level cultivation technique. It's very powerful. It'll cause trouble if you pass it to others. Uncle Lin, you can cultivate it yourself. These 2 cultivation techniques were chosen by Chu Fengmian from his memory. They didn't require much talent. Chu Fengmian kept his promise to the disciples of the Lin Mansion. He would lead them to the top of the 13 southwest cities. With these 2 cultivation techniques, it won't be difficult for the Lin Mansion to dominate the 13 southwest cities. Chu Fengmian said calmly. The Lin Mansion's highest level cultivation technique was only a black level middle grade cultivation technique. Furthermore, it required an extremely high level of talent to be able to cultivate. Now that the disciples of the Lin Mansion were to cultivate the agility technique, the strength of the Lin Mansion would increase exponentially within 3 years. Top grade profound grade. Top grade earth grade. The third elder muttered to himself in disbelief as he took the 2 cultivation methods. The Lin Mansion was able to dominate the martial Linlin city with just a mid-grade mystic level cultivation technique, which had been passed down for thousands of years. Even some of the first-rate forces in the victorious martial country might not be able to possess such a top-grade profound-grade cultivation technique. As for this earth-ranked top-grade cultivation technique, it was something that had only appeared in legends. Even in the entire victorious martial country, there might not be anyone who possessed it. After a long while, the third elder finally reacted and spoke with a confident look on his face. Don't worry, with these 2 cultivation techniques, it won't be difficult for the Lin Manor to dominate the 13 southwest cities. Feng Mian, you can leave in peace. Third elder said with a smile. With these 2 cultivation techniques, if the Lin Mansion still couldn't dominate the 13 southwest cities, then the Lin Mansion wouldn't be worthy of being called a martial arts family. Alright, I'll set off for the extreme capital tomorrow. Chu Fengmian said calmly. The next day, early in the morning, Chu Fengmian left the Lin Mansion without saying anything. He rode on the black-scaled horse king and galloped towards the extreme capital. Along the way, Chu Fengmian didn't feel lonely. He looked at the surrounding scenery as he passed by one city after another. The 13 southwest cities were located at the edge of the victorious martial country. It was an extremely remote place. Finally, after 7 days, a huge city appeared before Chu Fengmian's eyes. The extreme capital, the capital of the victorious martial country. The extreme capital was hundreds of times bigger than the martial Linlin city. The city gate alone was 100 meters tall. Countless martial artists walked through it. The extreme capital alone had a population of 10 million. After all, it was a capital city. Although it couldn't be compared to the famous ancient cities in the 9 regions, it was much more prosperous than the remote martial Linlin city. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. He rode on the black-scaled horse king and headed towards the city. Along the way, he saw many young martial artists. These martial artists were extremely talented. Many of them had opened up 5 or 6 spiritual meridians. If they were in the martial Linlin city, they would be considered peerless geniuses. Although they weren't common in the extreme capital, there were still a few of them. Through the conversations of these martial artists, Chu Fengmian understood why the extreme capital was so prosperous these few days. These few days, the 5 major forces of the victorious martial country would be recruiting disciples. I wonder if we'll be able to join one of the 5 great sects this time. A few young martial artists walked past Chu Fengmian and were chatting with each other. I heard that the disciples of the Candle Flame sect are all terrifying experts in controlling fire. Their flames can burn steel. It would be great if we could join the Candle Flame sect. A young warrior said with a face full of anticipation. He looked to be about the same age as Chu Fengmian. His strength had already reached the peak of the bone-tempering realm. At such a young age, he could be considered a genius. It's not just the Candle Flame sect. The disciples of the Aeolus sect, the Cold Snow Pavilion, and the Three Immortal Island are all terrifying. If we can join the 5 major sects, we will be considered outstanding figures in the victorious martial country. Another martial artist said. If we have a choice, it would be best to join the Victorious Martial Academy. After all, the Victorious Martial Academy is the most powerful force in the victorious martial country and the leader of the 5 major sections. It's not that easy to join the Victorious Martial Academy. Ordinary martial artists are just servants. It's not easy to enter the outer sect. Only by entering the inner sect can you be considered a true disciple of the Victorious Martial Academy. Another martial artist said. Why don't we see how the other 4 major sects are doing this time? Such conversations could be seen everywhere. Every year at this time, countless young martial artists from the victorious martial country would come to the extreme capital to participate in the recruitment. Less than 1 in 10 martial artists could enter the 5 major sections. However, as long as they could enter, they would soar to the sky like carps leaping through the Dragon's Gate. Therefore, every year, countless young martial artists would come to try their luck. Tomorrow is the day of the Victorious Martial Academy's recruitment. Chu Fengmian thought to himself as he looked at the notices posted everywhere in the city. Chapter 73. Wusheng Academy's recruitment was held at the west side of the Polaris capital, in front of a stone platform. There was only 1 day left before the recruitment. Chu Fengmian found a tea house nearby and walked in. Take care of the horse and serve me a cup of good tea. Chu Fengmian glanced at a waiter in the tea house and threw him an elixir. An energy-gathering elixir? The waiter was stunned when he caught the elixir. Then, he was overjoyed. This energy-gathering elixir could be exchanged for 5,000 bone-tempering elixirs in the black market. The tea was only worth about 100 bone-tempering elixirs. The rest of the money was more than what he earned in a year. Please come upstairs, young master. The manservant said with a fawning expression. Hurry up and give me the best seat upstairs. Chu Fengmian went up to the 3rd floor and sat down near the window. Looking at the endless stream of people outside, many of the warriors had also seen the notice and came nearby to find a place to rest. Soon, the tea house was full of people. Chu Fengmian sat on the 3rd floor. It was very quiet. He leaned against the window and drank tea while looking outside. Hurry up and find a good seat. Otherwise, I'll tear down your tea house. Hurry up. A clamor came from the bottom of the tea house. About 2 people came from below. The owner of the voice was a young warrior. He seemed to be one of the warriors participating in the disciple recruitment this time. Behind the young man, there was an old man who was following him leisurely. The old man looked like an ordinary follower, but Chu Fengmian could see that there were no wrinkles on the old man's arms. Instead, they were extremely smooth. This was a realm that could only be achieved when one's body was refined to the limit. The inconspicuous old man was a warrior at the peak of the body refining realm. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but look at the group of people. There was an old man at the peak of the body refining realm as a guard. This young man's background was not simple. What are those old guys thinking? Why did they make me participate in this assessment? The young man complained while looking at the tea house. Seeing the strange expressions of the warriors in the tea house, he became angry. What are you looking at? Get out if you keep looking. These words immediately angered a few of the young cultivators in the tea house. Just as he was about to stand up, a powerful voice rang out. Humph. The old man behind the young man snorted coldly. Suddenly, the martialists who were about to make a move were all stunned. Then, they quietly returned to their seats. A martial artist at the peak of the body refining realm as a guard. This young man's status was definitely not low. None of them dared to provoke him. Seeing that no one made a sound, the young man's face showed some pride. He looked around and suddenly saw a black horse outside the tea house. Black-scaled horse king? Such a rare mount actually exists in this tea house? the young man said with a greedy look in his eyes. "Shopkeeper, bring this black-scaled horse king here. This young master wants to take a good look at it." "Young master, this black-scaled horse king doesn't belong to our shop. It belongs to a distinguished guest upstairs. We don't dare to touch it," the manager of the tea house said hurriedly. He didn't dare to offend such a hedonistic young master, so he could only try to stall for time. "That distinguished guest is on the 3rd floor. Why don't you talk to him?" "What's there to talk about? This young master wants this batch of black-scaled horse kings. This young master wants to see if anyone dares to go against our Qing family." The young man snorted coldly. "Qing family." Hearing these 2 words, many of the martialists in the tea house were shocked. This Qing family was a large family in victorious martial country. It was said that the Qing family's ancestor was an elder of victorious martial academy. Many of the family members held important positions in victorious martial country. No wonder this young man was so arrogant. He was actually from the Qing family. "It is indeed a good horse. Let this young master ride it for 2 rounds. The young man looked at the black-scaled horse king and laughed. Then, he grabbed the black-scaled horse king. The black-scaled horse king was shocked and immediately cried out. "Humph!" Chu Fengmian was stunned. His body moved and he suddenly jumped down from the 3rd floor. He pointed his finger and forced the young man back a few steps. "Damn it! Who dares to stop this young master?" The young man looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. "It seems like you are the owner of this black-scaled horse king. This young master is the 3rd young master of the Qing family, Chen Qin. This young master has taken a fancy to this black-scaled horse king. If you know what's good for you, obediently hand it over." Qing Qin sneered and said. The moment he opened his mouth, he revealed his identity. The Qing family was one of the largest families in victorious martial country. He was also a core disciple of the Qing family and had an extremely high status. He believed that as long as he opened his mouth, Chu Fengmian would obediently hand over the black-scaled horse king. "Qing family? I don't know them." Chu Fengmian looked at Qing Qin and said impatiently. "Hurry up and get out of the tea house. Don't disturb this Chu's peace." "What Qing family?" Of course, Chu Fengmian didn't know them. However, it didn't matter if he knew them or not. A small family from victorious martial country was like an ant in Chu Fengmian's eyes. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian didn't even put this kind of family in his eyes. Even in this life, if Chu Fengmian was given a few months, he was confident that he could trample this Qing family under his feet. He naturally wasn't afraid. Oh no! This young man shouldn't be from the extreme capital. He actually offended the Qing family. This is going to be troublesome. Many cultivators in the tea house heard Chu Fengmian's words and started to discuss. Anyone who offended the Qing family would be in trouble. Even the disciples of the 5 major sects didn't dare to offend the Qing family rashly. "Get out? In victorious martial country, no one dares to speak to me like this." Qing Qin's expression was both angry and amused. "Looks like you're still an outsider. How dare you speak to me like this? Elder Xian, cripple this kid's cultivation for me. Let's see how arrogant he can be when I come back." Qing Qin shouted angrily. His grab was broken by Chu Fengmian's finger. Naturally, he knew that Chu Fengmian's strength was far above his. But so what? He had a big family behind him. Yes. Elder Xian, who was standing behind Qing Qin, calmly agreed. He looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly, "Junior, remember, don't offend the Qing family next time. This time, I'll give you a school lesson." Elder Xian suddenly made a move. His muscles bulged. Chapter 74. Elder Xian's attack was ruthless and merciless. What terrifying strength! This old man's body has been trained to perfection. He's at the peak of the body refining realm. As soon as the old man attacked, the countless warriors in the tea house forgot to come over. Their expressions changed greatly. The peak of the body refining realm was the strongest strength under the divine sea realm. Ordinary inner disciples of the 5 major sects were only at this level. This kid is going to be in trouble. Another genius has fallen under this claw. Many warriors shook their heads. This claw was not something a young warrior could withstand. Even if it was a disciple of the 5 major sects, they might not be able to withstand it. After all, this was an all-out attack from a peak of the body refining realm. Many warriors thought of the moment when Chu Fengmian's cultivation was destroyed by the claw. Where did this ruthless old man come from? He actually wants to destroy his cultivation with just a few words? Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with killing intent. This elder Xian actually wanted to destroy someone's cultivation because of Qing Qin's words. To a martial artist, having their cultivation crippled was much more painful than killing them. Chu Fengmian already had the intention to kill such a vicious person. You want to destroy my cultivation with just your strength? Come in, I'll break your claws first. Let's see how you'll do evil in the future. Chu Fengmian sneered. His figure flashed, and he rushed in front of Elder Xian. This speed was so fast that even Elder Xian could not react in time. Break for me. Chu Fengmian clenched his right fist and smashed it towards Elder Xian's hands. Kacha! Elder Xian's hands were bent at a strange angle. In one move, Elder Xian, who was at the peak of the body refining realm, had his hands destroyed by Chu Fengmian's punch. Get lost! Chu Fengmian said indifferently as he kicked Elder Xian. Elder Xian's figure was kicked out of the tea house and onto the street. This battle, which everyone thought had no suspense, ended with Chu Fengmian's victory. Who is this kid? Is he a genius from that family? To defeat a martial artist at the peak of the body refinement realm with a single move at the 5th level of the body refinement realm, this brat is actually so terrifying? There doesn't seem to be such a person in the extreme capital. The surrounding crowd started to discuss when they saw Chu Fengmian break Elder Xian's hands with a single move. Brat! You dare to go against our Cheng clan? Qing Qin said viciously as he looked at Elder Xian, who had been knocked to the ground. Very well, kid, it seems like you don't want to leave the extreme capital alive. You're courting death. Chu Fengmian looked at Qing Qin as if he was looking at a dead man. What Chu Fengmian hated the most was other people threatening him. Now, Qing Qin actually dared to threaten Chu Fengmian. He had simply violated Chu Fengmian's taboo. In Chu Fengmian's view, Qing Qin's threat was simply a kind of arrogance, which was exactly the same as Ding Hao, the young hall master of Wuyan Hall whom Chu Fengmian had met. The last person who spoke to me like that is already dead. Looks like you'll be the next one. Chu Fengmian said coldly. He moved his feet and walked towards Qing Qin. Brat! What are you doing? Seeing Chu Fengmian walking towards him step by step, Qing Qin's expression changed drastically. He did not expect that there would be someone who dared to disregard his identity and clash with him. Brat, you'd better think carefully. Our Qing clan's power in the Wuxing Academy is far more terrifying than you think. If you dare to hurt me today, the Wuxing Academy will seek revenge on you. The Wuxing Academy will definitely hunt you down to the ends of the earth. Qing Qin said proudly. He was not worried that someone would ignore his threat. The Wuxing Academy was the most powerful force in the Wuxing nation. Even the experts in the Divine Sea realm did not dare to offend the Wuxing Academy. Oh? When Chu Fengmian heard Qing Qin's words, he paused for a moment and a smile appeared on his face. Indeed, it was a smile. Chu Fengmian was laughing at Qing Qin's stupidity. Previously, when Qing Qin revealed his identity, Chu Fengmian did not care about him. Now that he had thoroughly offended Qing Qin, would Chu Fengmian still be worried about offending the Cheng clan? Chu Fengmian did not put the Cheng clan in his eyes. As long as they dared to threaten Chu Fengmian, even if they were from the 7 great sects, Chu Fengmian would still kill them without hesitation. Seeing Chu Fengmian stop, Qing Qin thought that his words had worked and intimidated Chu Fengmian. His originally fearful expression was replaced by his previous arrogance. Brat, do you know how powerful our Cheng clan is now? Today, if you take the initiative to fight the Black-Scaled Horse King, kneel on the ground and cripple your own cultivation, I can consider sparing your life. Brat, this is my last gift to you. Otherwise, you might lose your life. Stupid. Chu Fengmian coldly spat out these two words. What? Before Qing Qin could react, Chu Fengmian's figure was already in front of him. He grabbed Qing Qin's chest with one hand. How dare you? Before Qing Qin could finish his words, Chu Fengmian's hand had already smashed onto the ground. Bang! Qing Qin's body smashed into the ground, creating a huge crater. His cultivation level was only at the peak of the bone-tempering realm. This smash was enough to break all of his ribs. Silence. Now, there was only silence. The surrounding crowd was dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold before their eyes. Now, there was actually someone who dared to beat up a member of the Cheng clan in front of everyone on the street. Qing Qin's threat was completely useless against Chu Fengmian. This is a lesson for you. The next time I see you, you'll die. Chu Fengmian's pair of cold eyes stared at Qing Qin. His eyes contained boundless killing intent, causing Qing Qin to shudder. He did not dare to speak again. Scram! Chu Fengmian roared. Elder Xian hurriedly pulled Qing Qin and left. What a waste of time. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself and returned to the third floor of the tea house. Chu Fengmian did not take Qing Qin's threat to heart. As a martial artist, he naturally had to face many enemies. Chu Fengmian already had enough enemies. The 7 major sects were all Chu Fengmian's enemies. Naturally, he did not care if there was another Cheng clan. If the Cheng clan wanted to die, Chu Fengmian would not mind destroying them. Sir, you're a little reckless to teach Qing Qin a lesson. When Chu Fengmian returned to the third floor, a woman sitting beside him suddenly spoke. Chapter 75. The lady who suddenly spoke was also sitting on the third floor of the tea house. She was dressed in white and her face was covered with a white veil. Her behavior was extremely noble and elegant. She must be from a high family. Seeing Chu Fengmian return to the third floor of the tea house, the lady suddenly spoke. Oh? What trouble? Chu Fengmian asked. It seemed that the lady knew Qing Qin's identity and some things about Wu Sheng Academy's examination. Since she was willing to speak, Chu Fengmian naturally listened. Tomorrow, one of the 3 examiners of Wu Sheng Academy is from the Cheng family. The lady spoke calmly. The Cheng family will definitely take revenge for what happened today. They will definitely do something in tomorrow's examination. It's almost impossible for you to pass the examination. The examination of Wu Sheng Academy had always been supervised by 3 examiners. Now, one of the examiners was from the Cheng family. Because of what happened today, he would definitely target Chu Fengmian. The other 2 examiners were also from Wu Sheng Academy. They would definitely not take the initiative to offend the Cheng family. In this way, it was almost impossible for Chu Fengmian to pass the examination. If you are willing, you can participate in the examination with me tomorrow. I can guarantee that the Cheng family won't dare to do anything to you. How about it? The woman said indifferently. Her words seemed to have some intention of helping him. Oh? Thank you for your kind words. Chu Fengmian glanced at the woman with a confident smile on his face. However, I am not used to asking for help from strangers, let alone a lady. I have my own way to deal with tomorrow's examination. You don't have to worry about it. Chu Fengmian laughed. He naturally knew that the lady wanted to help Chu Fengmian. However, Chu Fengmian did not need a lady's help. Brat. Do you know who our miss is? Now that our miss is kindly helping you, how can you not accept it? A servant behind the lady shouted angrily. The lady's identity was so noble that not many people in G Capital dared to refuse her. Now that she wanted to help Chu Fengmian out of goodwill, she was rejected by Chu Fengmian. Chinger, don't talk too much. The woman spoke up to stop the servant. She looked at Chu Fengmian with a strange look in her eyes. It seemed that even she herself did not expect that her words would actually be rejected by someone. After all, the young masters of the big families in G capital were all obedient to her. Now that she took the initiative to help him, it was extremely unusual that he did not appreciate it. If you have any trouble, you can find me through the jade. She left behind a jade talisman and placed it on Chu Fengmian's table. After which, she left with her servant. What a strange woman. However, it is kind of her to want to speak up and help. Chu Fengmian watched the woman leave and smiled to himself. Wusheng Academy's examination. Chu Fengmian Cheng. Miss Qing Chu Fengmian S. He Fmian Miss Chu Feng's Miss. Just as he took 2 steps forward, he suddenly turned around, picked up the jade talisman on the table, and placed it into his storage bag before leaving. On the other side, the woman and her servant had already walked far away. Your Highness, why did you help that brat? That brat looks arrogant. Why don't you let the Cheng family teach him a lesson? That woman by the name of Qing grumbled in dissatisfaction. She was still brooding over Chu Fengmian's rejection of the lady's help. Given this woman's status, if news of her being rejected were to spread out, she would become the biggest joke in the world. Qing, don't say any more. That man offended Chen Qin. If we don't help him, I'm afraid he won't be able to enter Wusheng Academy. I don't want a genius to be ruined by the Cheng family. The lady sighed. Offending the Cheng family meant that Chu Fengmian had failed the examination. The Cheng family would never let Chu Fengmian enter Wusheng Academy. Chu Fengmian had slapped the Cheng family's face in front of everyone today. If Chu Fengmian was allowed to enter Wusheng Academy, the Cheng family would lose face. So what if that brat is ruined? Your Highness has given him a chance. He didn't know how to cherish it, so he can't blame your Highness. Qing said. When that brat suffers a loss tomorrow, he will naturally understand your Highness' kindness. Yes, if there's a chance tomorrow, let's help him. The lady's eyes were filled with worry. After all, he's such a genius. If I can rope him in, it'll be a good thing for me. The two of them chatted as they disappeared into the crowd. The next day, Chu Fengmian woke up early in the morning. He didn't ride the black-scaled horse king. Instead, he left it at the tea house and walked alone to the designated location. Thousands of young warriors had gathered in front of the stone platform. These people were all warriors who had come to participate in Wusheng Academy's examination. Warriors under the age of 30 could participate in Wusheng Academy's examination. Naturally, thousands of warriors would come every year to give it a try. The woman that Chu Fengmian had met yesterday was also in the crowd. What surprised Chu Fengmian was that the servant named Qing was also in the line of warriors who were taking the assessment. She was also here to participate in Wusheng Academy's examination. Apart from that, Chu Fengmian also scanned the warriors participating in the examination. Most of the warriors were above the 7th level of the bone-tempering realm. After all, it was impossible for anyone below the 7th level of the bone-tempering realm to pass the examination. Warriors who had reached the body-tempering realm were already in the minority. Chu Fengmian looked around and saw at most a dozen people. The lady in white he met yesterday was also in the body-tempering realm. However, she seemed to be hiding her cultivation level. Chu Fengmian could only see that she was in the body-tempering realm, but he couldn't tell how strong she was. The crowd chatted as they waited. Finally, after 2 hours, there were more than 10,000 warriors gathered around the stone platform. A few blue-robed men finally landed on the stone platform. Chapter 76. One of the blue-robed men spoke. Suddenly, 10 large ships appeared in the sky, breaking through the clouds and descending. These are the arcs of Wusheng Academy. These arcs are said to be able to carry 100 people and travel 1,000 miles per person. They are even faster than the black-scaled horse king. Only Wusheng Academy can create these arcs. The other 4 major forces are unable to do so. It is said that the arcs are engraved by Imperial Wind Realm elites. A single arcs is enough to destroy a city. Many gasps of surprise could be heard from the crowd. This was especially true for the warriors who were participating in Wusheng Academy's assessment for the first time. They were so shocked that they were speechless. Such a large ship could travel in the air. What arcs? They are just the most common airships. Chu Fengmian could not help but think to himself as he listened to the crowd's discussion. The flying ship might be considered a rare item in the victorious martial nation, but in the truly bustling regions, like the 7 great sects, some disciples would use this kind of flying ship to travel. These airships, which could only carry 100 people, were of the lowest grade. The airship arrays engraved on them were engraved by Imperial Wind Realm warriors. The real airships of the 7 major sects were 1,000 meters long and could carry 10,000 people. Compared to the real airships of the 7 major sects, these airships were like trash. Chu Fengmian grumbled in his heart. However, he also understood the meaning behind the blue-robed man's words. There were only 10 arcs in total. Each arcs could only carry 100 people at most. This meant that only 1,000 people could head to the assessment location and take the assessment. There were more than 10,000 martial artists present. This meant that only 1/10 of the warriors present could really go to Wusheng Academy for the assessment. The rest did not even have the right to take the assessment. No. It should be said that this was actually a test. Only those who could step onto the arcs were qualified to proceed to the next assessment. This assessment was actually also to purge some martial artists who relied on making up the numbers. Everyone can use whatever means you have to board the arcs. However, there is one rule. Once you board the arcs, you are not allowed to attack. Whoever dares to attack the warriors on the arcs will be disqualified. The group of blue-robed men slowly walked away, leaving a path on the stone platform. Everyone, please. Let's go. Hurry up. I want to board the arc too. Countless martialists shouted in a frenzy. Many of them had already rushed over with vigorous steps. These people were running at the very front because they wanted to be the first to board the arc. As long as they boarded the arc, they would be completely safe. Many cultivators quickly ran over. You want to go up? Don't even think about it. Earth palm. 10,000 seizing hands. When the warriors at the back saw that the warriors at the front were about to board the boat, they all activated their spiritual energy. He suddenly attacked. Bang! 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 Although these martial skills were not very powerful, they were very well practiced. Those martial artists who rushed at the very front, although their strength was not weak, under so many martial techniques, they were still defeated. One by one, they fell to the ground, no longer able to board the arc. At a time like this, whoever rushes to the front is just like a target. When Chu Fengmian saw this scene, he shook his head and said. The stone platform was about 50 meters away from the arc. Ordinary warriors would have to use the height of the stone platform to jump onto the arc. Once they were knocked down, they would naturally have no chance of boarding the arc. Now, Chu Fengmian also noticed that the body-tempering realm warriors in the crowd did not make a move. Now was a time of chaos. They could only wait until it was more stable before they could find an opportunity to board the arc. A few minutes passed. Although there were still many warriors who tried to rush out and board the arc, they were unable to withstand the attacks. But under the bombardment of countless martial artists behind them, they were still unable to hold on and fell down. 5 minutes passed. Unexpectedly, not a single person dared to board the arc. Looks like these little fellows have all learned to be smart this time. However, wasting time like this is not a good idea. A blue-robed man said with a smile. The arc trial had already been conducted 7 or 8 times. Many of the warriors who came to participate in the trial had already participated several times. They already knew the secret of the arc trial. Naturally, they were not willing to take the initiative. In this way, it became a stalemate. Looks like we have to provoke them. Another blue-robed man spoke. He stepped forward and swept his gaze across the entire crowd before speaking. Whoever can board the arc first will receive 10,000 contribution points from the Academy of Wusheng. As soon as the blue-robed man finished speaking, the crowd suddenly fell silent. Almost all of the martial artist's eyes were burning with greed. 10,000 contribution points. In the Academy of Wuxing, contribution points could be used to exchange for some treasures and natural treasures. A qi gathering elixir only required 1 contribution point. 10,000 contribution points were equivalent to 10,000 qi gathering elixirs at the very least. What a big deal! There were many disciples from big families among the warriors present. However, 10,000 contribution points was still an astronomical figure to them. The Ark trial was only the first part of the trial. It was not even considered an official trial. Yet, there was such a big deal. 10,000 contribution points. Even Chu Fengmian's eyes burned with desire. He was currently cultivating the Dragon Slayer skill and lacked elixirs the most. If he could obtain these 10,000 contribution points, Chu Fengmian could exchange them for elixirs to cultivate his dragon battle skill. Perhaps, he would be able to condense the 4th drop of ancient battle dragon blood essence. Chu Fengmian could already feel that a few of the body refining realm warriors were starting to get restless. I'll take these 10,000 contribution points. A figure suddenly dashed out from the crowd. With a tap of his foot, he actually leaped into the air and leaped toward the Ark. Lin Maju. The genius of the Lin family has already reached the 7th level of the body refining realm. Lin Maju is indeed one of the 4 geniuses of this generation. He has such terrifying strength at such a young age. With such strength, he would be ranked above average in the Academy of Wuxing's inner court. Many warriors discussed among themselves. The man in front of them looked like he was only 17 or 18 years old. His cultivation level had already reached the 7th level of the body refining realm. He was 2 levels higher than Chu Fengmian's cultivation level. Flying through the air was something that only martial artists at the 7th level of the body refinement stage and above could accomplish. Chapter 77. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Another figure dashed out from the crowd. This figure charged in front of Lin Maju in a single move. It's Ao Wuming. That lunatic from the Ao family. Lin Maju has made his move. When they heard the other voice, they started discussing whether it was the voice of a cultivator. Lin Maju and Ao Wuming were rumored to be at the peak of the younger generation in the extreme capital. They were known as the 4 geniuses. In the extreme capital, Chu Fengmian had heard the names of the 4 geniuses countless times yesterday. Lin Maju, Ao Wuming, Chu Banj, and Chu Wuyin. The names of the 4 geniuses were very famous in the entire extreme capital. Lin Maju, Ao Wuming, and Chu Banj were all men. Only the last one, Huan Qingsha, was a woman. These people were the peak of the younger generation in the extreme capital. They were known as the 4 geniuses. Looking at it now, Lin Maju and Ao Wuming had both stepped into the 7th level of the body refinement stage before the age of 20. They were worthy of the title of the 4 geniuses. Ao Wuming. Do you have to go against me? Lin Maju looked at Ao Wuming with anger on his face. Very well. Today, you and I will fight to determine the winner. As he spoke, Lin Maju's figure moved and a light sword was drawn from his waist. Lin Maju was a sword cultivator who specialized in light swords. He used techniques to fight, which surprised Chu Fengmian. For seasoned sword technique. Lin Maju's sword flashed, and the surrounding air instantly became fresh like spring. It was the sword of recovery. The moment his sword light flashed, countless streaks of sword qi suddenly erupted, condensing qi into a sword. He's very talented to reach such a realm. Chu Fengmian thought to himself as he watched Lin Maju make his move. Condensing qi into a sword was the first realm of sword qi. It was enough to use spiritual power to strike out sword qi and attack the opponent. This was the realm of condensing qi into a sword. For sword cultivators, reaching this stage meant that they had truly stepped into the threshold of sword cultivation. As for those who couldn't condense qi into a sword, they were not. In Chu Fengmian's opinion, they were not even sword cultivators. It was an insult to the name of sword cultivators. Condensing qi into a sword? I didn't think that Lin Maju, your strength actually still had some breakthroughs. Unfortunately, this young master's strength is no longer the same as before. Ao Wuming let out a cold laugh as a black miasma was unleashed from his body. Under this black miasma, the sword chi that Lin Maju shot out was completely blocked. The black miasma condensed into a short knife in Ao Wuming's hand. Oh! Luocha's crafty ways. However, this Rakshasa uncanny way is truly too crude. He should have only cultivated a portion of the true Rakshasa uncanny way. Chu Fengmian thought as he watched Ao Wuming attack. He was familiar with countless martial skills and cultivation methods, so he was extremely familiar with each and every move that the two of them made. In fact, these two people not only had extremely high aptitudes, but their backgrounds were also extremely high. The cultivation methods and martial skills that they cultivated were definitely the best in the victorious martial country. It was no wonder that he could achieve so much at such a young age. When the two figures collided in the air, the shock waves that spread out caused the surrounding martialists to retreat, not daring to get close. Lin Maju, Ao Wuming, if the two of you are willing to fight, then go to the side. Let me have these 10,000 contribution points. A hearty laugh suddenly rang out. A figure suddenly sprang out from the crowd and ran towards the arc at lightning speed. This figure was actually a martial artist at the 7th level of the body refining stage. Chu Banj. Lin Maju and Ao Wuming both saw the person and spoke at the same time. Stop him. We'll fight another day. The two of them stopped almost at the same time and sent two martial skills at Chu Banj at the same time. Lin Maju, Ao Wuming, Chu Banj. 3 of the 4 great geniuses of the extreme capital are already here. I wonder if it's possible for the 4 great geniuses to gather today. A martialist muttered to himself as he looked at the 3 people in the sky. Many people had heard of the 4 great geniuses of the extreme capital, but very few had actually seen them in person. The 4 great geniuses were from different factions, thus it was rare for them to meet each other. The only possibility was that the disciple recruitment examination of Wuxing Nation would gather the 4 of them at the same time. Let's see who will be the first to step onto the arc with their own abilities. Chu Beiji let out a hearty laugh. His figure flashed as he activated an extremely strange movement technique. He dodged the joint attack of Lin Maju and Ao Wuming in one move and was now less than 10 meters away from the arc. Don't tell me that Chu Xiang will take first place? That's possible. After all, only the 4 great geniuses have a chance of obtaining the first place on the arc. The crowd began to discuss. Everyone wanted to obtain 10,000 contribution points, but only the 4 great geniuses had a chance of obtaining it. The aftermath of their battle was not something an ordinary martialist could withstand. The only person who can withstand Chu Banj now is, before a martialist could finish his sentence, the sound of a zither rang out. As the sound of the zither rang out, a transparent wall suddenly appeared in front of Chu Banj and blocked his path. Heavenly melody of wondrous words. It's Chu Wuyin. The 4 great geniuses are all here. Countless martialists looked around when they heard the sound of the zither. They saw the figure of a woman in white appear in the sky. It's her. Chu Fengmian looked over when he heard Chu Wuyin's name. He was slightly surprised. Chu Wuyin was the woman in white that Chu Fengmian had met in the tea house yesterday. The woman in white held a zither in her hand. She was a martialist who majored in music. Her music seemed unremarkable, but if it was cultivated to great success, it would take the life of a martialist with every strum of the zither. This was especially true for the way of music. It was extremely strange and difficult to find a martialist to counter it. So it's Your Highness Chu. If Your Highness Chu wants these contribution points, all you have to do is let me know. I, Chu Banj, will naturally offer them to you with both hands. Chu Banj looked at Chu Wuyin with a sinister look in his eyes. The moment he spoke, his desire to pursue her was obvious. As for Chu Wuyin, when she heard Chu Banj's words, her face was cold. Even her eyes revealed a hint of impatience. Cut the crap. The contribution points are up to everyone's ability. Whoever has the ability can take them. Chapter 78. Your Highness Chu, if it were any other day, I would have given in to you. But this time, I won't give in to you. Lin Maju looked at Chu Wuyin and suddenly attacked. A sword chi had already slashed towards Chu Wuyin, sealing off the path in front of her. 10,000 contribution points was an astronomical figure for them. In Wuxing Academy, these contribution points could not only be used to exchange for energy-gathering pills, but also many other treasures, martial techniques, and cultivation techniques. Its value was far beyond 10,000 energy-gathering pills. It was not something that could be given away casually. That's right. The first place will be determined by each individual's means. We are all known as the 4 geniuses of the extreme capital. Now, it's time to determine who is better. Ao Wuming said coldly. The more talented a disciple was, the more arrogant they were. Although they were also the 4 geniuses, they had always looked down on the other 3. Now, it was indeed the time to determine who would be the first place. Whoever was the first to step onto the ark today and obtain the 10,000 contribution points would be the first person to take the first place. I wonder who will be the first to step onto the ark. Everyone was discussing as they looked at the 4 people in the air. The 4 of them were of the same cultivation level, and their strength was very close. Anyone could be the first to step onto the ark. Lin Maju, Ao Wuming, you two dare to compete with Her Highness Chu? Chu Banj sneered at the side. Your Highness Chu, I will beat the 2 of them down and teach them a lesson. Chu Banj, you don't have to worry about this. Chu Wuyin said coldly. Her tone indicated that she did not want to have anything to do with Chu Banj. Humph. Chu Banj's eyes flashed with a hint of viciousness. But it quickly disappeared. All right. Since Your Highness Chu is unwilling to let me help, I will not interfere. However, these 2 people have disrespected Your Highness, so I will still teach them a lesson. Chu Banj sneered and immediately rushed towards Lin Maju. Chu Banj's muscles bulged. He was actually a martial artist who cultivated his body. With a punch, Lin Maju was forced to take a step back. However, Lin Maju's sword also slashed Chu Banj's body, forcing him to retreat. Chu Fengmian could see that the strength of these 4 geniuses was indeed very close. On the other side, Ao Wuming and Chu Wuyin were also fighting. In a situation where their strengths were so close, it would be difficult to determine the victor. 10,000 contribution points. Looks like it's time to make a move. Chu Fengmian calmed down. He didn't want to act rashly, but 10,000 contribution points was a great temptation for Chu Fengmian. Since that was the case, Chu Fengmian wasn't willing to continue hiding. In the Martial Victory Academy, strength was closely related to resources. Making a name for himself was his first step in the Martial Victory Academy. Everyone, there's no need to fight. These 10,000 contribution points, I'll take them. Chu Fengmian laughed out loud. His figure moved, and he suddenly dashed out of the crowd. The sudden appearance of Chu Fengmian was unexpected. Who is it? How dare you interfere in the battle of the 4 geniuses? Where did this reckless brat come from? He actually wants to snatch the 10,000 contribution points from the hands of the 4 geniuses? 5th level of the body refining realm. He's a strong fighter, but this kind of strength is nothing in front of the 4 geniuses. Everyone's gaze was focused on Chu Fengmian, sizing him up. They looked at Chu Fengmian with surprise and disdain, but none of them looked at Chu Fengmian with hope. In their opinion, it was impossible for Chu Fengmian to snatch the first place from the hands of the 4 geniuses. Look, isn't he the one who injured the 3rd young master of the Cheng clan yesterday? A martial artist suddenly looked at Chu Fengmian and asked. He looked at Chu Fengmian and found him extremely familiar. Now that he thought about it, he was the one who had injured the 3rd young master of the Cheng clan yesterday at the tea house. He still dares to participate in the Martial Victory Academy's assessment? Doesn't he know about the Cheng clan's influence in the Martial Victory Academy? Maybe this brat isn't afraid. With such talent, his background must be extraordinary. His background is not low. In front of the Cheng clan, even some of the royal palaces in the martial victory nation are inferior. What background does this brat have to contend with the Cheng clan? Everyone started to discuss. Brat, who are you? What makes you think you can compete with me for these 10,000 contribution points? Lin Maju took a step back and separated himself from Chu Banj. He looked at Chu Fengmian and spoke with disdain. Leave now. The first place isn't something you can compete for. Compared to Lin Maju, Chu Banj was even more arrogant. That's right. A foreign brat has no right to compete for the first place. Get lost. Ha ha ha, a little brat at the 5th level of the body refining realm wants to compete? What a joke. Ao Wuming laughed loudly and his eyes were filled with mockery. Only Chu Wuyin didn't speak immediately. Instead, she looked at Chu Fengmian with surprise. She didn't expect Chu Fengmian to suddenly make a move and compete for the 10,000 contribution points. With your strength, it won't be difficult for you to step onto the arc. Why are you involved in this battle? Chu Wuyin looked at Chu Fengmian and spoke calmly. Leave now. If you need contribution points, I can lend you some. You don't need to be involved in such a dangerous situation. Oh? Your Highness Chu knows this person? Hearing Chu Wuyin's words, Chu Banj's eyes changed instantly. Their gazes towards Chu Fengmian were filled with sizing up and hostility. That's right, hostility. In the extreme capital, Chu Wuyin had always looked down on any young talents. If Chu Banj wasn't one of the 4 great geniuses and a member of the family Chu, it would be difficult for him to talk to Chu Wuyin. Moreover, even if he did, he would be coldly rejected most of the time. Since when did Chu Wuyin choose to take the initiative to talk to another man? We just met once, Chu Fengmian said calmly. Chu Fengmian said calmly. He looked at Chu Wuyin and revealed a confident smile. I said before that I'm not used to relying on a woman's help. I will get the 10,000 contribution points myself. What an arrogant brat. Since you don't appreciate it, I won't be polite either. Lin Maju sneered. Since Chu Fengmian wasn't willing to leave, he naturally planned to force Chu Fengmian to leave. Strength was the truth of everything. Make your move. Since you're a friend of Her Highness Chu, I'll give you a chance. Chapter 79. Chu Fengmian looked at Lin Maju and said calmly. Why don't you make the first move? I'm afraid that if you don't, there won't be a chance. The moment he said this, there was a dead silence. Then, there was a lot of noise. Everyone was in disbelief. They looked at Chu Fengmian as if they were looking at a fool. Is this brat crazy? He wants to challenge Lin Maju, one of the 4 great geniuses, and let Lin Maju make the first move? Crazy, he's crazy. Even the 4 great geniuses wouldn't dare to look down on him like this. I'm afraid this guy doesn't know how to write the word death. I thought he was another genius, but I didn't expect him to be a fool. Chu Fengmian heard the crowd's discussion, but he only revealed a cold smile at the corner of his mouth. He was right. Chu Fengmian was confident that he could defeat Lin Maju in one move. The swordsmanship that Lin Maju relied on was like a child in front of Chu Fengmian. If it were the other 3 people, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be so relaxed. However, Lin Maju was a swordsman. Chu Fengmian was considered a grandmaster of swordsmanship. In terms of sword essence, he was like the ancestor of all swordsmen in the world. Lin Maju's swordsmanship was like a joke in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Because of this, even if Lin Maju entered the Divine Sea realm, he was still weak in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Good. Crazy. I thought that Ao Wuming was crazy enough to treat me like Wuming. I didn't expect there to be someone even crazier. Lin Maju said with anger and laughter. As one of the 4 great geniuses of the extreme capital, he was looked down upon like this. Moreover, Chu Fengmian seemed to be only at the 5th level of the body refining realm. Let's see if your strength is worthy of your arrogance. Lin Maju looked at Chu Fengmian and said coldly. Let me tell you first. When I make a move, I won't be merciful just because you're Princess Chu's friend. You have to understand. This Chu and Miss Chu have only met once. We can't be considered friends. Chu Fengmian said calmly. He didn't want to have anything to do with Chu Wuyin. If he wanted to enter the Martial Victory Academy, he wanted to enter with his own strength. It had nothing to do with Chu Wuyin. Good, you have character. Lin Maju looked at Chu Fengmian and laughed. If you can withstand this attack, then I'll consider you my friend. Come on. Chu Fengmian said calmly. He stood where he was with his hands behind his back, looking extremely relaxed. For seasoned swordplay. Lin Maju moved. The light sword in his hand spun, its speed was so fast that it dazzled the eyes. It was almost impossible to see where the light sword was. At the same time, a scorching heat wave rushed toward Chu Fengmian. Summer. Lin Maju's sword was the four-season sword technique Summer. The scorching flames made it hard for people to open their eyes. Lin Maju didn't show any mercy when he attacked. He actually used his best move, the four-season sword technique. If it were any other sword technique, this kid might have a chance. However, once the four-season sword technique is used, no one among the younger generation of martial artists, except for the other three of the four great geniuses, can withstand the next attack. Everyone shook their heads when they saw this scene. Lin Maju was right. When he said he wouldn't show any mercy, he naturally used his strongest sword technique. Once the four-season sword technique was used, there was no way Chu Fengmian could withstand it. Everyone could already imagine Chu Fengmian's defeat in the next moment. Chu Fengmian's strength was very strong, but it wasn't enough to challenge the four great geniuses. The four great geniuses were ranked at the peak of the younger generation in the extreme capital. It meant that their strength wasn't just strong in name. Hiss. It was so weak that it couldn't be heard clearly. Almost without any sound, the sword had quietly approached Chu Fengmian's back. In front of Chu Fengmian, there was almost an endless stream of heat waves, making the martial artists who were looking for him think that Lin Maju's sword would come from the front. However, the position of this sword was behind Chu Fengmian, creating a diversion. This move is not bad, but the trembling of the sword edge doesn't seem to be hidden. Chu Fengmian sneered in his heart. This sneak attack was not bad, but it still couldn't escape Chu Fengmian's eyes. The moment the sword was drawn, the sword edge would tremble slightly. This trembling sound might not be noticed by other martial artists, but for a sword expert like Chu Fengmian, it was like a bell ringing. Bang! Chu Fengmian suddenly pulled out the black and blue sword in his hand. He suddenly turned around and pointed behind him. The sword edge of the black and blue sword accurately fell on the body of the light sword in Lin Maju's hand. His sword was seen through by Chu Fengmian. How could it be? Lin Maju looked at his sword being blocked in disbelief. To be able to accurately land on the body of his light sword, this was a reaction that could only be done by someone who had completely seen through his swordsmanship. Although the other three of the four great geniuses could block his four-season swordsmanship, it was still impossible for them to see through his sword. Even if he could block it, he could only do so with his strength. His sword, in the hands of a sword expert, was said to appear and disappear unpredictably. One had to know that the sword expert was already at the pinnacle of sword Dao in Wuxing country. To be said to appear and disappear unpredictably was already an extremely high evaluation. It should be impossible for martial artists of the same realm to see through his sword. Lin Maju no longer looked at Chu Fengmian with contempt in his eyes. Being able to see through the sword just now, even if it was a fluke, meant that Chu Fengmian was extraordinary. Oh? That's interesting. To be able to block Lin Maju's sword, this kid has some strength. Ao Wuming looked at Chu Fengmian and also put away the contempt in his eyes. To be able to do this was enough to make him take him seriously. Kid, take another sword of mine. Lin Maju looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted angrily again. He didn't believe it. He didn't believe that his sword could be seen through by a martial artist of the same realm. As a sword cultivator, especially a light sword, he relied on his elusive swordsmanship when facing enemies. If his swordsmanship was seen through, his strength would be far inferior to other martial artists of the 7th level of the body refinement realm. Hiss! The sword in Lin Maju's hand trembled violently. Above the sword edge, endless sword intent condensed within. Condensed chi into a sword. Countless sword auras suddenly slashed towards Chu Fengmian. These sword auras were incomparably ferocious and made hissing sounds in the air. Swords shouldn't be used like that. Chu Fengmian looked at Lin Maju and his eyes changed. Chapter 80. Phantom Body Technique. After awakening the 3rd drop of Primordial War Dragon Blood Essence, Chu Fengmian's strength was enough to raise the Phantom Body Technique to the initial level. Although the Phantom Body Technique was only at the initial level, it was a heaven-class body technique. Among the countless body techniques in the 9 regions, it was enough to rank in the top 10. Even at the initial level, Chu Fengmian's speed was much faster than warriors in the same realm. Even warriors in the Divine Sea realm couldn't reach Chu Fengmian's speed. So fast. What kind of body technique is this? Even the body techniques used by the 4 geniuses can't be so fast. I once saw a Divine Sea realm warrior attack with my own eyes. Even his body technique couldn't reach such a terrifying speed. Countless exclamations were heard. The speed of this body technique was extremely fast. Some weaker warriors couldn't even see Chu Fengmian's figure clearly. Bang! Bang! The sword chi that slashed towards Chu Fengmian was easily blocked by Chu Fengmian's black azure sword. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly rushed towards Lin Maju. His momentum was like a rainbow. Chu Fengmian's figure was like a sharp sword. Fear appeared in Lin Maju's eyes as cold sweat dripped down his body. 4 seasons simultaneously. As one of the 4 geniuses in the extreme capital, Lin Maju's mind was extremely tough. Under such circumstances, he still managed to stabilize his mind. He didn't dare to hold back his light sword anymore. The 4 seasons simultaneously was the highest level of the 4 season sword technique. Under the 4 season sword technique, countless sword shadows struck out crazily around Lin Maju. In an instant, Lin Maju felt his mouth turn ice cold. You lost. At some point, Chu Fengmian was already standing behind Lin Maju. In Chu Fengmian's hand, there was a piece of clothing. At the same time, there was a piece of clothing missing from Lin Maju's chest. I lost. Lin Maju looked at Chu Fengmian and said blankly. The piece of clothing missing from his chest was cut off by Chu Fengmian's sword. If Chu Fengmian had used a little more force just now, it wouldn't have pierced Lin Maju's clothes, but his chest. With this sword strike, the outcome of the battle had been decided. This kid's swordsmanship is above Lin Maju's. Chu Banj looked at Chu Fengmian and sneered. So what if your swordsmanship is strong? In the face of absolute strength, this level of swordsmanship is meaningless. Chu Banj looked at Chu Fengmian with hostility in his eyes. Although Chu Fengmian said that he had only met Chu Wuyin once, would Chu Wuyin actually choose to help him? If that was the case, then this meeting would be even more terrifying. At the very least, Chu Wanda didn't think that Chu Wuyin would take the initiative to help him. I didn't expect this kid to win. Lin Maju's swordsmanship has actually been defeated. This person's surname is Chu. Could it be someone from the family Chu? But Chu Beiji doesn't seem to recognize him either. Where did he come from? Among the crowd, many people were still in a daze. They did not expect such an outcome. Lin Maju had actually lost in swordsmanship. It wasn't that there weren't people who could defeat Lin Maju, but those people had defeated Lin Maju with strength. If one couldn't win in a contest of strength, there was no other way. But in swordsmanship, it was a contest of swordsmanship. It had nothing to do with strength. The strength that Chu Fengmian had just displayed was the strength of the 5th level of the body refinement realm to defeat Lin Maju. It could only be said that Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship had completely surpassed his. Your swordsmanship is still a little immature. Chu Fengmian looked at Lin Maju and said calmly. Losing to me isn't something unacceptable. Wait until your swordsmanship has improved, then you can challenge me again. Losing to Chu Fengmian was indeed not a big deal. Chu Fengmian was the disciple of the master of sword Dao, the #1 sword cultivator. He was a true ancestor of sword cultivators. It would be a joke if he lost to Lin Maju. Lin Maju's swordsmanship was just a little immature. If he was tempered, he would also grow into a dazzling sword cultivator. Chu Fengmian had said those words on purpose because he cherished talent. That's right. No one is undefeated on the path of martial artists. I lost to you. It's also a reminder for me. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Lin Maju's face looked better. His eyes were no longer confused, but filled with determination. I always thought that my swordsmanship was invincible among the younger generation in the extreme capital. Perhaps only someone in the Wuxing Academy could defeat me. But it seems that I was ignorant. In the extreme capital, there are still people whose swordsmanship surpasses mine. Lin Maju looked at Chu Fengmian and said with determination, "Let's fight again when we reach the Wuxing Academy." With that, Lin Maju took the initiative to retreat and didn't intend to stop Chu Fengmian. The extreme capital was just a small stage. When they reached the Wuxing Academy, it would be time for them to show their prowess. I didn't expect you to have such strength. Chu Wuyin looked at Chu Fengmian. Her eyes kept scanning Chu Fengmian as if she wanted to see through him. But no matter how she looked, she couldn't figure out Chu Fengmian's background. In the extreme capital, there had never been such a person. In the Wuxing Academy, there had never been such a genius. Chu Fengmian seemed to have popped out from a crack in a rock. So what if your swordsmanship is exquisite? In front of true strength, everything is meaningless. Seeing Chu Wuyin talking to Chu Fengmian again, Chu Wanga snorted coldly. "Boy, do you dare to fight with me?" Chu Wanga shouted coldly. He took a step forward and looked at Chu Fengmian with hostility in his eyes. "If you lose, leave the extreme capital and don't have any contact with Her Highness Chu." As soon as Chu Wanga's voice fell, there were countless boos from the crowd. Chu Wanga's pursuit of Chu Wuyin was something that every warrior in the extreme capital knew. But Chu Wuyin had always been like a high and mighty fairy and had never paid attention to him. However, Chu Wanga didn't think much of it because Chu Wuyin had always treated other young talents the same way. But Chu Fengmian's appearance shocked Chu Wanga and even made him angry. Chu Wuyin had never been so friendly to anyone before. This made Chu Wanga feel as if something that belonged to him had been taken away. Chapter 81. This is going to be interesting. Even Chu Wanga is going to make a move. It seems that Chu Wanga is jealous of this kid's close relationship with Highness Chu. Chu Wanga is not Lin Maju. Lin Maju's strength relies on his swordsmanship. If his swordsmanship is broken, his strength will be far inferior to the other three. Chu Wanga is a body cultivator. It is said that he was born with great strength. His brute force is frightening. That's right. Chu Wanga relies on brute force. No matter how strong this kid's technique is, he will not be able to display it in front of Chu Wanga. Everyone looked at Chu Fengmian and shook their heads. Even though Chu Fengmian had defeated Lin Maju, none of them were optimistic about Chu Fengmian. Lin Maju's characteristics were very obvious. If one could counter Lin Maju's swordsmanship, it would not be difficult to defeat him. However, Chu Wanga was a body cultivator. He had almost no weaknesses. He only had brute force. If one could not match Chu Wanga in terms of strength, it would be impossible to defeat him. "Chu Wanga, what are you doing?" Chu Wuyin heard Chu Wanga and said coldly. "Who I befriend has nothing to do with you." "Humph, of course I don't care who Highness Chu wants to befriend. Today, I just want to prove that a good-for-nothing is not qualified to befriend Highness Chu." Chu Wanga sneered at Chu Fengmian with disdain in his eyes. "Kid, do you dare to fight with me? If you don't dare, leave the Polarity Capital now. Then, you can avoid some physical pain. You want to fight with me?" "Sure, I accept." Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Wanga and said calmly. However, the condition needs to be changed. I don't seem to have any relationship with Miss Chu. It's unreasonable to use this as a wager. How about we change the wager? Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Wang and said calmly. His expression was extremely calm. Wager on what? Chu Wang was a little stunned when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He did not expect Chu Fengmian to accept his wager. Originally, Chu Beiji only wanted to force Chu Fengmian to back down, so that Chu Fengmian would lose face in front of everyone. Now, with Chu Wen's proud personality, she would definitely not bother with Chu Fengmian anymore. But now, Chu Fengmian actually accepted it. This was something he didn't expect. Chu Beiji's expression froze for a moment before a cold smile appeared on his face. Since he's here to court death, I'll teach this brat a lesson and let Chu Wen understand. In the extreme capital, I am the only one who is worthy of her. Chu Wang's expression changed. Then what do you want to bet? Chu Beiji only wanted to teach Chu Fengmian a lesson and dispel his arrogance. He didn't care about the specifics of the bet. He didn't think he would lose to Chu Fengmian. So what if Chu Fengmian's swordsmanship was exquisite? The 5th level of the body refinement realm was still too low. If Chu Fengmian was the same as Lin Maju, he would be at the 7th level of the body refinement realm. Chu Beigu wouldn't dare to make such a request. But at the 5th level of the body refinement realm, even Chu Beiji's body couldn't be broken. Now, he was almost in an invincible position. Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Beiji's expression and guessed his thoughts. He moved the corner of his mouth and said, "How about 10,000 chi-gathering pills?" "What? 10,000 chi-gathering pills? Where does this brat get his confidence from? He dares to make such a big bet. 10,000 chi-gathering pills? Can this brat take out so many? These 10,000 chi-gathering pills are equivalent to 10,000 contribution points." Everyone was shocked to hear Chu Fengmian's words. 10,000 chi-amassing pills, even for those disciples of the big families, was a huge number. It wasn't easy for any family to take out 10,000 chi-gathering pills in one go. For the geniuses of these families, taking out a few thousand was already the limit. 10,000 was almost impossible. What? 10,000 chi-gathering pills? Chu Beigu looked at Chu Fengmian in shock. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to take out such a big bet. Chu Beigu deliberately looked at Chu Fengmian a few more times. He originally thought that Chu Fengmian was riding a tiger and couldn't get off from this bet. Changing the bet was just to give himself a way out. But now, such a big bet was definitely because Chu Fengmian was extremely confident in his own strength. What? You can't take it out? If you can't, then 5,000 is fine. Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Beigu and smiled. He chose to bet on chi-gathering pills because he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make a big profit. Chu Fengmian's chi-gathering pills were almost finished. These 10,000 chi-gathering pills were all that Chu Fengmian had left. He had to find an opportunity to earn more chi-gathering pills. Chu Fengmian needed these 10,000 contribution points, but if there was a chance to earn more, Chu Fengmian wouldn't let it go. What a joke! I can still take out 10,000 chi-gathering pills. Chu Banja's eyes revealed a hint of suspicion. But I wonder if you really have 10,000 chi-gathering pills. Are you trying to force me to back down? Chu Beigu didn't hide his suspicion. Even many of the surrounding onlookers were looking at Chu Fengmian suspiciously. Chu Beigu said he could take out 10,000 chi-gathering pills. Everyone believed him. Chu Beigu was a member of the family Chu. With the family Chu's reputation, not to mention 10,000 chi-gathering pills, even 100,000 chi-gathering pills wouldn't be enough to buy it. Chu Beigu naturally wouldn't dare to say something without thinking. But Chu Fengmian was a foreign martial artist with no reputation at all. Whether he could take out such a huge sum of money was also a question worthy of doubt. Whoosh! Chu Fengmian didn't explain anything. Instead, he opened his storage bag and countless chi-gathering pills danced in the air. Like a long river of pills, countless qi-gathering pills flashed in front of Chu Fengmian and then were put away in his storage bag. There were definitely 10,000 qi-gathering pills in this long river of pills. So, young Master Chu should believe me now. Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Beigu with a smile. He was just waiting for Chu Banj to agree. That was when he would be able to make some extra money. Chapter 82. Humph, isn't it just 10,000 qi-gathering pills? I'll bet. Chu Banj looked at Chu Fengmian with a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. Kid, since you're going to give me qi-gathering pills, of course I'll take them. Let's see if you have the ability to take them. Chu Fengmian's face was as calm as ever. Just like when he faced Lin Maju, he was full of confidence. Does this kid really have another trump card? He actually dares to bet 10,000 qi-gathering pills with Chu Banj? In the crowd, some warriors looked at Chu Fengmian and asked suspiciously. 10,000 qi-gathering pills. If not for lack of confidence, who would dare to bet such an astronomical number? Difficult. This kid's trump card is about to be exposed. Body movement and swordsmanship are nothing in front of Chu Banj. Another warrior shook his head and said. Maybe this kid doesn't understand Chu Banj's strength. Although he defeated Lin Maju, he doesn't stand a chance against Chu Banj. 10,000 qi-gathering pills was a bet that no one had ever seen before. Like before, I'll let you make the first move. Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Banj and said the same thing. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't even have the chance to make a move. Arrogant. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Chu Banj's face suddenly became angry. With his strength, no one had ever dared to let him make a move. Kid, do you really think you can beat us four geniuses just because you defeated Lin Maju? Unfortunately, I'm not a coward like Lin Maju. So what if your swordsmanship is strong? I'd like to see how you'll use your swordsmanship to contend with my strength. Chu Banj roared, his body suddenly bulging. His body was already extremely tall, and now that he was bursting with spiritual power, his muscles bulged. At a glance, he was already close to 3 meters tall. He was a true giant. Chu Banj's skin had a metallic bronze color, which was completely different from the skin of an ordinary person. Using spirit medicines to temper one's body is nothing more than a side branch. True body cultivators first cultivate the bones, then the body. Chu Banj thinks using spirit medicines to temper his body is a shortcut, but he's actually crippling his own cultivation base. Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Banj. He could tell at a glance. It was obvious that Chu Banj's body had been soaked in countless spirit medicines to be so tough. However, this toughness was ultimately an external force. His skin was tough, but his body hadn't been completely tempered yet. Brat, today I will let you know. In the face of true power, all sword techniques and movement techniques are meaningless. Chu Beiji let out a hearty laugh as he took a step forward. Like a raging bull, he suddenly rushed towards Chu Fengmian. Chu Beiji's body could be said to be much tougher and stronger than a bull's. With every step he took, the stone tiles beneath his feet cracked. Die! Chu Wang rushed in front of Chu Fengmian and punched out. The power of this punch was extremely shocking, comparable to a martial artist at the 8th level of the body refining realm. It could be said that Chu Beiji's first move was a real killer move without mercy. Sword. In Chu Fengmian's hand, the black azure sword suddenly struck out towards Chu Beiji's fist. Bang! When the two collided, the sound of metal colliding was heard. Under Chu Fengmian's black azure sword, only a white mark was left on Chu Beiji's hand. His body was already comparable to some high-grade yellow-rank spirit weapons. It was enough to resist the black azure sword's blade. Using his body to resist the blade. Chu Beiji deserves to be called. His body is terrifying to such an extent. Many people booed. In the crowd, many martial artists saw Chu Beiji in action for the first time. Using his body to resist a spirit weapon was an unimaginable realm. Even a spirit weapon can't hurt Chu Beiji. How can Chu Fengmian win? Some martial artists shook their heads. At this point, they no longer believed that Chu Fengmian had any chance of winning. Even a spirit weapon couldn't hurt Chu Beijie. In this way, Chu Beijie was in an invincible position. In this clash of swords, Chu Fengmian had a deep understanding of Chu Beijie's strength. The rebounding force of the sword made Chu Fengmian's arm slightly numb, but it quickly recovered under the power of the ancient battle dragon bloodline. Chu Beijie didn't stop after the first punch. He bombarded Chu Fengmian with another punch. Phantom. Chu Fengmian's feet moved, leaving only an afterimage. At the same time, Chu Fengmian's figure suddenly retreated. He was ready to put some distance between them. Want to escape? Not so easy. Chu Beijie punched through the afterimage and charged at Chu Fengmian once more. He knew that Chu Fengmian's strongest point was his swordsmanship. Now that he was so close to Chu Fengmian, there was no chance for Chu Fengmian to use his swordsmanship. This was the most perfect way to deal with a sword cultivator. Go to hell, kid. I'll kill you today and let those who want to pursue Her Highness Chu know that she's not someone they can pursue. Chu Beijie laughed loudly, his eyes filled with killing intent. Another punch was thrown out. This time, the wind generated by the punch contained the will of a ruler. Invincible King's Fist. Chu Beijie is using the family Chu's strongest Earth-class martial technique, the Invincible King's Fist. Chu Beijie wants to kill Chu Fengmian directly. The punch was filled with kingly aura. Everyone was shocked. The Invincible King's Fist was the family Chu's strongest martial technique. Only the family Chu's core disciples could cultivate it. If it had been an ordinary fight, there would have been no need to use the Invincible King's Fist. Given Chu Beijie's physique, using the Invincible King's Fist would have injured his body and required a long time to recover. Now that Chu Beijie had used the Invincible King's Fist, he was planning to kill Chu Fengmian. It's impossible for Chu Fengmian to block such a terrifying punch. Even if Chu Fengmian doesn't die, he'll be seriously injured. The crowd couldn't help but sigh. However, there was no mercy in a fight between martial artists. Chu Beijie couldn't be blamed for being so vicious. Are you trying to make an example out of me? Chu Fengmian heard Chu Beijie's words and sneered. Since it was a contest of strength, Chu Fengmian wasn't necessarily afraid of Chu Beijie. Fight! Chu Fengmian roared in his heart. His figure also rushed towards Chu Beige. Chapter 83. Has Chu Fengmian lost his mind? Is he planning to take Chu Beige's Invincible King's Fist head-on? Seeing Chu Fengmian's actions, almost everyone thought that Chu Fengmian had gone mad. The Invincible King's Fist was so powerful that even a martial artist in the 7th level of the body refining realm might not be able to take it head-on. Chu Fengmian, a sword cultivator, had abandoned his sword to fight Chu Beige head-on. He was using his weakness to fight Chu Beige's strength. Humph. Giving up? Chu Beige sneered inwardly at Chu Fengmian's actions. Chu Fengmian must be crazy to fight him head-on. In terms of strength, the other 3 of the 4 prodigies were no match for him. How could Chu Fengmian, a martial artist in the 5th level of the body refining realm, stand a chance against him? Boom! The 2 fists collided, exploding with terrifying power. The shockwaves from the collision were enough to make the surrounding martial artists retreat in fear of being caught up in it. Chu Fengmian is only in the 5th level of the body refining realm. It's amazing that he can hold his own against Chu Beige for so long. Ao Wuming muttered to himself from the side. There was a hint of admiration in his voice. At least, Ao Wuming didn't think that if he was in the 5th level of the body refining realm, he could stand a chance against Chu Beige. At that time, he might not even be able to take a single blow. It's a pity that he's too reckless. Once Chu Beige's killing intent is triggered, he's dead for sure. Ao Wuming shook his head. The Invincible King's Fist was reserved for desperate measures. Even when he fought Chu Beige, if Chu Beige had used this move, he would have lost without a doubt. Chu Fengmian was only in the 5th level of the body refining realm. No matter how one thought about it, Chu Fengmian couldn't possibly withstand the invincible king's fist. Chu Bange had the same thought in his mind. A smile appeared on his face. He could already see the moment Chu Fengmian was about to be killed. But when the two fists collided, the impact of the impact caused Chu Bange's expression to change drastically. The power of Chu Fengmian's fist far exceeded his imagination. Bang! The two forces collided with each other. Chu Fengmian and Chu Bange both took a few steps back. In fact, Jianwang retreated even further than Chu Fengmian. How is this possible? Chu Fengmian actually blocked that terrifying invincible king's fist. Everyone looked at Chu Fengmian's still standing figure and shouted in disbelief. The moment the invincible king's fist was unleashed, it meant that the battle was over. No one thought that Chu Fengmian would be able to block it. However, Chu Fengmian actually managed to block it. Furthermore, he was able to force Chu Beiji to retreat. What a terrifying power! Is this kind of strength really something a 5th-level body refinement stage martial artist can achieve? Ao Wuming and Lin Maju were dumbfounded. This kind of power was simply terrifying to the extreme. He'd forcibly jumped 2 levels, giving him enough power to fight Jianwang head-on. In fact, he was even able to gain the upper hand in a confrontation of power. You're hiding your strength? The moment Chu Beiji was forced to retreat, this was the only thought in his mind. Chu Beiji didn't believe that Chu Fengmian was only at the 5th level of the body refinement stage. The only possibility was that Chu Fengmian was hiding his strength. My realm is indeed at the 5th level of the body refinement stage. However, who said that a 5th-level body refinement stage martial artist can't defeat a 7th-level body refinement stage martial artist? Chu Fengmian laughed loudly as he looked at Chu Beiji. He was indeed hiding his strength. Chu Fengmian's punch just now actually contained the power of the 2 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence. If Chu Fengmian had used all 3 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence, Chu Beiji would have been killed by Chu Fengmian. If Chu Fengmian used all 3 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence, even a divine sea realm martial artist would be killed by Chu Fengmian's punch. Chu Beiji was nothing. However, 2 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence were far more than enough to deal with Chu Beiji. There was no need to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. The full power of 2 drops of ancient war dragon blood essence was enough for Chu Fengmian to contend with a martial artist at the peak of the body refinement stage. Aren't you a body cultivator? Then let's use strength to determine the winner. Chu Fengmian punched out with an indescribable joy in his heart. He had the blood of the ancient war dragon in his body. What he had inherited was not only the power of the ancient war dragon, but also the battle intent of the ancient war dragon. Only by fighting could he become stronger and more carefree. He could not wait to fight Chu Beiji to the fullest. Take another punch from me. Chu Fengmian laughed and moved his body. Once again, he rushed towards Chu Beiji and punched him once more. Chu Beiji was momentarily unable to react. Where did Chu Fengmian get such powerful strength from? He could only brace himself and take the punch. However, Chu Fengmian's punch shook his arm until it was numb. Upon closer inspection, some of the blood vessels in his arm were broken. This was the effect of his body being unable to withstand Chu Fengmian's strength. His body could be soaked in countless spiritual herbs and was incomparably tough. This was the first time his body was broken by a soul master of the same level. No, this kid's strength is too strange. I have to stall for time. When the 2 fists collided, Chu Beiji understood that Chu Fengmian had surpassed him in terms of strength. He wanted to escape, but Chu Fengmian would not give him the chance. Take another punch from me. Chu Fengmian punched out again. This time, Chu Beiji did not choose to take it head-on. Instead, he turned around and fled. He fled. As one of the 4 geniuses of the extreme capital, Chu Beiji had actually fled. Chu Beiji was a body cultivator. The strongest thing about a body cultivator was his own body and strength. However, in front of Chu Fengmian, Chu Beiji could not even compete with his strength. This was simply beyond everyone's understanding. When had the invincible Chu Beiji been forced to flee by someone? Moreover, it was a 5th-level body refining realm martial artist who was 2 levels lower than him. Although Chu Fengmian's strength was strong, everyone could still see that Chu Fengmian was really in the 5th-level body refining realm. However, the strength that Chu Fengmian had displayed was far beyond the 5th-level body refining realm. Want to escape? It's not that easy. Chu Fengmian looked at Chu Beiji with cold eyes. Chapter 84. The invincible king's fist represented Chu Xiana's murderous intent. Chu Fengmian was able to withstand it because of his strength. He was still hiding his true strength. If Chu Fengmian's strength had been slightly weaker, like that of a true 5th-level body refining realm spirit master, the invincible king's fist would have been enough to kill him. Chu Xiana had really intended to use this opportunity to kill Chu Fengmian. Now that Chu Xiana wanted to escape, Chu Fengmian would not give him the chance. Fight! Chu Fengmian said in a low voice. His body suddenly moved, and he chased after Chu Xiana. In terms of speed, Chu Fengmian was much faster than Chu Xiana. Bang! All of a sudden, he sent another fist rumbling toward Chu Banj. Chu Xiana's 2 fists met the attack. The powerful force caused Chu Xiana's hands to break. I admit defeat. Before Chu Xiana could speak, Chu Fengmian's 2nd fist fell. How could it be so easy to admit defeat? Chu Xiana had wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, and Chu Fengmian had wanted to kill him as well. Chu Beiji had to die. Another punch was thrown out. The power of this fist was much stronger than the previous one. The bloodline of the primordial battle dragon had always been stronger when encountering a strong opponent. The more they fought, the stronger they became. Every fist Chu Fengmian threw was much stronger than the previous one. At the same time, Chu Xiana's strength was almost at its limit. The invincible king's fist had drained more than half of his spiritual power, making it impossible for him to strike back at Chu Fengmian. How terrifying! Is Chu Fengmian's spiritual power limitless? Some warriors exclaimed in shock when they saw Chu Fengmian's every fist. Ordinary warriors, like Chu Xiana, would use up their spiritual power. After a few punches, their spiritual power would be exhausted, and their strength would weaken. Everyone thought that Chu Fengmian had used all of his strength and consumed a lot of spiritual power to resist the power of the punch just now. But now, each of Chu Fengmian's punches contained such terrifying power. His power didn't decrease because of the consumption of spiritual power. On the contrary, Chu Fengmian's power grew stronger as he fought. Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy seemed to be boundless. Damn it! How can his spiritual energy be so strong? Could it be that this kid is not a human, but a demonic beast? Chu Banj looked at Chu Fengmian, his heart filled with wild thoughts. Such terrifying strength and abundant spiritual energy was no longer something that a warrior could achieve. It was more like a monster in human form. However, in the face of Chu Fengmian's punch, he could only block it. Boom! The punch even caused a huge rumbling sound to be heard. Chu Beiji's body was sent flying back dozens of meters. He barely managed to prop himself up when he almost fell off the stone platform. But his body was already riddled with holes. His skin was broken and blood was flowing out. This was the result of his body being broken when he couldn't withstand the power of the punch. You are indeed worthy of being one of the 4 great geniuses. 4 punches and you are only slightly injured. I wonder if you can take my 5th punch. Chu Fengmian laughed heartily. His figure moved and charged towards Chu Banj once again. It seemed that Chu Fengmian had no intention of letting Chu Banj go. Does Chu Fengmian have no intention of letting Chu Banj go? Among the crowd, many warriors saw Chu Fengmian's actions and exclaimed. Now, Chu Fengmian's action of chasing after the victory showed that he had no intention of letting Chu Banj go. Sparring had always been about stopping at a certain point. But Chu Fengmian's actions showed that he had no intention of doing so. Is he not afraid of the family Chu's revenge? Chu Banj is the family Chu's genius. If he is injured, the family Chu will go crazy. A warrior said in surprise. The family Chu could be said to be the largest family in Wuxing country. It was even larger than the Cheng family. Since he dared to offend the Cheng family, he might not be afraid of the family Chu. Moreover, Chu Banji's punch just now was clearly aimed at Chu Fengmian's life. Another warrior said. But he shook his head when he saw Chu Fengmian's actions. Although Chu Fengmian was strong, he was still too reckless. Chu Banj represented not only himself but also the family Chu behind him. The strength of a single person was nothing in front of a truly large family. Not good. If this continues, Chu Banj will die here. A blue-robed man was shocked when he saw Chu Fengmian throw another punch. If Chu Banj really died here, the family Chu would definitely go crazy for revenge. When that happened, as the examiner of the Arc assessment, he would also be implicated by the family Chu. The family Chu was not something a disciple of Wuxing Academy like him could contend with. Have mercy! The blue-robed man hurriedly shouted, but Chu Fengmian's fist had already landed. Bang! With a loud bang, Chu Banji's body was forcefully sent flying. He fell off the stone platform and lay there motionless. Seeing this scene, the blue-robed men all panicked and hurriedly ran over. When they felt Chu Banji's voice and aura, the blue-robed men finally heaved a sigh of relief. Since he was not dead, this matter was not a big deal. For warriors, getting injured in a spar was a common occurrence. As long as he was not dead, the family Chu would not vent his anger on them even if he was angry. The blue-robed man could not help but look at Chu Fengmian with eyes full of gratitude. If Chu Fengmian had really intended to kill him, Chu Banj would not have been able to survive. Although Chu Banj's ribs were broken and he could only lie paralyzed on the bed, it would be difficult for him to recover without some sacred healing medicine. But this was already giving him face. Chapter 85. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Chu Fengmian walked to Chu Banj's side and picked up his storage pouch. He placed all 10,000 chi-amassing pills into Chu Fengmian's storage pouch. Chu Fengmian won this battle. Even if Chu Banj was unconscious, he would take what belonged to Chu Fengmian. Where did Chu Fengmian come from? How can his strength be so terrifying? He defeated 2 martial artists at the 7th level of the body refining realm at the 5th level of the body refining realm. Chu Fengmian is a monster. I didn't expect that there would be a martial artist who surpassed the 4 geniuses in the extreme capital. Exclamations were heard. The gazes with which the crowd looked at Chu Fengmian were no longer filled with contempt and disdain. Practically all of them were looking at Chu Fengmian with burning gazes. Passion, envy, and worship. It was completely different from before. In the 9 regions, martial prowess and strength were always respected. As long as one had strength, they could have their own status. Is there anyone else who wants to fight for the first place? Chu Fengmian's eyes scanned the crowd. Now that he had defeated Lin Maju and Chu Banj, the first place of the arc was already set. Right now, the only ones who could contend against Chu Fengmian were perhaps the other 2 who were also part of the 4 great geniuses. Don't look at me. I give up. Ao Wuming saw that everyone was looking at him and hurriedly said. Everyone has seen Brother Chu's current strength. It's impossible for me to compete with him. I give up on the first place of the arc race. Ao Wuchang said with a smile. He had some grudges with Lin Maju and didn't want Lin Maju to take the first place. As for who should take the first place, although he had some ideas, he was clear about Chu Fengmian's strength. Even if he went up to fight with Chu Fengmian, he couldn't win. He didn't want to waste time. Me too. Chu Wuyin also said. Her strength was about the same as Chu Banj and Lin Maju. She didn't have much of a chance against Chu Fengmian. The 4 geniuses of the extreme capital all chose to give up. When Chu Fengmian heard their words, he wasn't too surprised. Based on his current strength, he had indeed surpassed the 4 geniuses. Chu Fengmian's body moved, and he landed on the arc in a stable manner. The first place of the arc assessment was confirmed to be Chu Fengmian. Chu Wuyin, Ao Wuming, and Lin Maju followed closely and landed on the ark. Chu Banji's ribs had been broken by Chu Fengmian. He couldn't move. Chu didn't kill Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's ribs was broken, was cost, and Fengmian. He was. He got to him. Thank you, Brother Chu. Chu Fengmian landed on the ark. The blue-robed men also landed on the ark. The leader of the group couldn't help but approach Chu Fengmian and express his gratitude. Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian had done him a great favor by not killing Chu Banj. Although the blue-robed man's strength was a notch higher than Chu Xiang's, he was only at the 8th level of the body refining realm. It was impossible for him to stop Chu Fengmian. If Chu Fengmian wanted to kill Chu Banj, he couldn't stop him. Chu Fengmian chose to help him and spare Chu Banj's life. He had done him a great favor. It's a small matter. Chu Fengmian glanced at the blue-robed man and sensed a familiar cultivation method from him. He suddenly opened his mouth to speak. You're right. Do you know Ao Lan? Chu Fengmian asked. He chose to listen to the blue-robed man and didn't kill Chu Banj. It wasn't because the blue-robed man was a disciple of Wusheng Academy. To Chu Fengmian, no matter how strong the martialist was or how deep his background was, it was impossible for him to command him. However, Chu Fengmian felt an extremely familiar cultivation technique from the blue-robed man. It was the same cultivation technique that Chu Fengmian sensed from the young man, Ao Lan, in the barbaric mountain range. It seemed that the blue-robed man had some relationship with Ao Lan. Chu Fengmian had a good impression of the young martialist named Ao Lan. Only now did he make the choice to help him. You know our young hall master? The blue-robed man asked in surprise when he heard Chu Fengmian. His words attracted the attention of the other martialists on the ark. Young hall master? This Chu Fengmian actually knows a young hall master of the Martial Victory Academy. Could it be that he's actually from the Martial Victory Academy? Some of the martialists started to discuss. What they were most curious about was which force Chu Fengmian came from. After all, with Chu Fengmian's talent and strength, he didn't seem like someone that could be nurtured by an ordinary force. To be able to nurture such a powerful Chu Fengmian, there must be a great force behind him. Cough cough. The blue-robed man also noticed the surprise in Chu Fengmian's voice. He quickly lowered his voice and spoke to Chu Fengmian again. My name is Yu Feng, a disciple of Wusheng Academy's Warmu Hall. Ao Lan is the young hall master of our Warmu Hall. Do you know Ao Lan? It was no wonder that Yu Feng was so surprised. Ao Lan was young and had almost never left Wusheng Academy. Some of the disciples of Wusheng Academy might not even know of his existence. Yu Feng only knew the young hall master because he was a disciple of Warmu Hall. Chu Fengmian, who wasn't even a disciple of Wusheng Academy, actually knew Ao Lan. This made Yu Feng extremely surprised. Yes, I met him half a month ago in the barbaric mountain range. Chu Fengmian said. Chu Fengmian was also slightly surprised. It was no wonder that Ao Lan didn't care when he mentioned the young hall master of Wusheng Academy. It turned out that he was also a young hall master of Wusheng Academy. Now that Chu Fengmian had come to the extreme capital, he had some understanding of Wusheng Academy. Among the countless halls of Wusheng Academy, Warmu Hall ranked in the middle. It was much higher than Martial Flame Hall. Chapter 86. It seemed that the group of Wusheng Academy disciples he met in the barbaric mountain range had quite the background. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. Since this Ao Lan was a young hall master of the Martial Victory Academy, the identities of the others were suspicious as well. Mo Chanhen, Yun Jialan, and Yu Zhanqing had always addressed Ao Lan as peers. These three people's statuses were definitely not inferior to Ao Lan's. Especially when Chu Fengmian participated in the test this time, he discovered that the inner court disciples of Wusheng Academy had to be at least at the 5th level of the body refinement stage to be able to enter. The strongest person in Hao Lan's group was only at the peak of the bone-tempering stage. Although they were extremely young, being able to enter the inner court at such a young age clearly meant that the faction behind them was extraordinary. Half a month ago? Young Hall Master did indeed go to the barbaric mountain range half a month ago. Yufeng thought for a moment and suddenly thought of this. This was exactly the same as what Chu Fengmian had said. This also meant that Chu Fengmian really knew Hao Lan. Young Hall Master obtained a fortuitous encounter after going to the barbaric mountain range the last time. His strength and aptitude greatly increased. Now, he has already entered the sacred ground of our Wuxing Academy to cultivate. If Brother Chu wants to meet Young Hall Master, I'm afraid that you'll have to wait for some time. Yufeng said with a smile. However, there's no rush. With Brother Chu's strength, as long as you pass the test, it won't be a problem for you to immediately enter the inner court. There's still plenty of time in the future. A few months is nothing. Yufeng was speaking to Chu Fengmian in a tone as if he was talking to someone of the same generation. He did not have the same high and mighty attitude that he had when facing the many martial artists who were participating in the assessment. Although Yufeng was an inner court disciple of Wuxing Academy, his strength wasn't much stronger than Chu Fengmian. At the very least, Yufeng knew that although he could gain the upper hand in a battle with Chu Banj, it was impossible for him to force Chu Banj into such a miserable state. With Chu Fengmian's strength, entering the inner court was a certainty for him to enter Wuxing Academy. Naturally, he wouldn't be arrogant when speaking to Chu Fengmian. Yes. Chu Fengmian nodded. He also knew what Hao Lan's fortuitous encounter was. It was the Emperor Luan Grass. Emperor Luan Grass was enough to turn a trash into a genius. Hao Lan's aptitude was already extremely high. With the Emperor Luan Grass, it was reasonable for his strength to improve rapidly. There was actually another Emperor Luan Emperor Grass in Chu Fengmian's Luan Grass. Chu Fengmian had originally planned to refine this Emperor Luan Grass himself and use it to increase his strength. Chu Fengmian Luan Emperor Luan Grass was Luan Emperor. This Emperor Luan Grass was now placed in Chu Fengmian's storage pouch, preparing to exchange it for a good price. I wonder what the content of the trial of the Wuxing Institute is. Below the Ark, countless ancient martial art practitioners were still fighting, wanting to step into the Ark. While waiting, Chu Fengmian was bored and started a conversation with Yufeng. With his strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to enter the Martial Victory Academy. However, knowing one's enemy was the key to victory. Chu Fengmian also wanted to know what the upcoming assessment was about. There are 3 more tests. Yufeng didn't show any impatience when he heard Chu Fengmian's question. He explained with a smile. The first test is to go to Wuxing Academy. It will test one's strength and realm. Although this ARC test will be able to filter out some people, it is also possible that there are many people who sneaked in. This test will eliminate nearly half of the people. Chu Fengmian nodded in agreement when he heard Yufeng's words. That's right. The test was just a filter. It might not be enough to eliminate all the people. The ARC trial was an extremely chaotic environment. Perhaps some cultivators would take advantage of the chaos to sneak in. The first test was to test one's strength and realm. If a cultivator didn't have strength, everything was just empty talk. Strength was the only true proof of a cultivator. This test isn't difficult for Brother Chu. Generally, one can pass the test when one's strength reaches the 8th level of the bone-tempering realm. Yufeng spoke again. Cultivators who can pass this test can be considered disciples of Wuxing Academy. However, if they can't pass the next 2 tests, they'll just be odd job disciples. They'll be no different from servants. They'll have to do heavy work every day. For a colossal force like the Martial Victory Academy, if they wanted to maintain the Academy's expenses, they would definitely need countless servants. These servants were the odd job disciples of Wuxing Academy. These odd job disciples had to complete a lot of work every day. Only then could they obtain resources. However, even an odd job disciple's resources were much more than the resources of many small clans outside. Therefore, many cultivators chose to enter Wusheng Academy. Being an odd job disciple was much better than being a genius in a remote city. These odd job disciples had to be at least 8th level of the bone tempering realm to take up the position. The second test is the big hunting competition. All the cultivators who pass the first test will be placed on a deserted island. That island is filled with demonic beasts. There's a total of 7 days. During these 7 days, you'll have to hunt demonic beasts continuously. According to the different monster cores, different scores will be given. Those who reach the top 100 will pass the second test. Yufeng smiled as he spoke. After passing the second test, you'll be promoted to the outer sect of Wusheng Academy and become an outer sect disciple. Outer sect disciples have a much better life than odd job disciples. They'll be able to obtain a lot of resources to cultivate. You can also listen to the lectures of some experts in Wusheng Academy to comprehend the martial Tao. Compared to the disciples of the large clans outside, you'll have a much better life. Only 100 cultivators will be left for the second test. After hearing Yufeng's words, Chu Fengmian finally understood how difficult it was to join Wusheng Academy. Out of 10,000 cultivators, only 500 would be able to enter as odd job disciples. On the other hand, only 100 cultivators would be able to enter the outer sect. The number of cultivators who could enter the inner sect would be even fewer. To Brother Chu, there shouldn't be any problem with these 2 tests. It's just that the last test is slightly special. Chapter 87. A little special? Chu Fengmian was slightly surprised by Yufeng's words. Chu Fengmian had a rough understanding of the first 2 tests. The first test was the simplest. It tested one's strength and cultivation level. These 2 points were also the most basic for a martial artist. As for the second test, it actually tested the martial artist's actual combat ability. After all, strength alone was meaningless for a cultivator. True combat ability was the best standard. It was just like Lin Maju and Chu Banj. In terms of strength, Chu Banj was far superior to Lin Maju. However, in a real fight, Lin Maju might not necessarily be afraid of Chu Banj with his sword skills. Their strength was on par. This was the difference between actual combat ability and strength. The third test should be for an outer disciple to be promoted to an inner disciple. Chu Fengmian knew that the highest point of the Martial Victory Academy's test was to become an inner disciple. Once one became an inner disciple, they would be free of the tedious outer disciple and would be able to cultivate in peace. Chu Fengmian's goal was to become an inner disciple. Only an inner disciple could be considered a true disciple of the Martial Victory Academy. The third test is called the Heavenly Path. Yufeng slowly explained. The Heavenly Path is actually a pagoda left behind by an ancestor of the Martial Victory Academy. A phantom will appear on every floor of the pagoda. The strength of the phantom will be the same as the cultivator's cultivation level from the first floor onward. Then, with each level up, the phantom's power will become stronger. The Heavenly Path is actually a test of a cultivator's ability to fight above their cultivation level. It's not difficult for a true genius to fight above their cultivation level. Many sects hall masters and elders will choose to watch the Heavenly Path's test. Whoever performs well will be valued by one of the hall masters and elders and be accepted as a disciple. That person will become an inner sect disciple in one leap. If they are not valued, they can only become an outer disciple until they have the opportunity to be valued by one of the hall masters or elders. Yufeng explained. In the Martial Victory Academy, the difference between an inner disciple and an outer disciple was not a difference in strength. Instead, one had to be apprenticed to one of the hall masters or elders to be promoted to an inner disciple. In terms of strength, the difference between the two was actually not that great. This Heavenly Path is rather interesting. Chu Fengmian thought to himself when he heard about the Heavenly Path. In the 7 major sects, there were also things similar to this kind of Heavenly Path. Although it was not the same kind, it was the same in theory. This kind of thing was created by some big sects in ancient times to cultivate their disciples. At that time, the martial Tao was flourishing, and everyone was a genius. Things like the heavenly path were just some of the methods used by the disciples of the large sects to train. In Wuxing Academy, it had become a kind of test. However, the fact that Wuxing Academy was able to obtain the heavenly path proved that some experts had emerged from Wuxing Academy in the past. After all, even some of the forces in the 9 regions that were larger than Wuxing Academy might not necessarily possess the heavenly path. Chu Fengmian's decision to come to Wuxing Academy was the right one. Just this heavenly path alone made Chu Fengmian's trip worthwhile. With Brother Chu's strength, it shouldn't be a problem for you to reach the 20th floor of the heavenly path. Yufeng looked at Chu Fengmian and smiled. Every 10 floors of the heavenly path represented a realm. Chu Fengmian was able to defeat Chu Banj and Lin Maju, who were at the 7th level of the body refinement realm. This also meant that Chu Fengmian's strength was sufficient to reach the 20th floor of the heavenly path. This kind of strength would be considered a very good result in Wuxing Academy's inner sect. The 20th floor? Chu Fengmian sneered when he heard Yufeng's words. If he unleashed his full strength, he would be able to defeat martial artists at the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd level of the Spirit Sea realm. However, even if he defeated a martial artist at the 3rd level of the Spirit Sea realm, Chu Fengmian would only reach the 70th floor. There was still a gap of 3 levels to reach the 100th floor. It was said that the peerless geniuses of ancient times were able to reach the 100th floor and conquer the heavenly path. Chu Fengmian's current strength was comparable to those true ancient geniuses. He also had to pass the 100th floor of the heavenly path. The people on the ark are all here. Get ready to set off. While Chu Fengmian and Yufeng were chatting, the ark was already full of people. There were a total of 10 arks and a total of 1,000 martial artists. Not one more, not one less. Below the ark, the martial artists who didn't squeeze onto the ark were all secretly upset. However, this was how the assessment was. Only the best could pass the assessment. The ark assessment was only the first assessment. It couldn't even be considered as an assessment. The real assessment was still to come. On the ark, Chu Fengmian sat on the same spot and rested. I didn't expect senior brother Chu's strength to reach this level. No wonder you aren't afraid of the Cheng family. Chu Wuyin had unknowingly appeared beside Chu Fengmian as she spoke. Its Highness Chu actually took the initiative to talk to Chu Fengmian. Since when did Highness Chu take the initiative to talk to a man? Countless martial artists around started discussing when they saw Chu Wuyin quietly walk over. The main reason for Chu Fengmian and Chu Banj's battle was actually because of Chu Banj's jealousy. Although Chu Fengmian had clarified his relationship with Chu Wuyin, in the eyes of most martial artists, the relationship between the two of them wasn't that simple. My humble daughter apologizes to your excellency for what happened with Chu Banj. Chu Wuyin said in a low voice. Chu Banj chose to provoke Chu Fengmian and bet with him just now because of her. Oh? Miss Chu, you don't have to be so apologetic. This matter has nothing to do with you. Chu Fengmian glanced at Chu Wuyin and said indifferently. He wanted to snatch the first place on the ark and obtain the reward of 10,000 contribution points. Given Chu Banj's personality, he would definitely fight with Chu Fengmian. Even if Chu Wuyin wasn't there, it would still be the same. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had won 10,000 chi-amassing pills in the bet. This was an unexpected windfall. Senior brother Chu, if you don't mind, you can call me junior sister. Chu Wuyin glanced at Chu Fengmian and said. You and I are both going to enter the Wuxing Academy. We should address each other as senior brother and junior sister. All right. Chu Fengmian nodded. There was no doubt that he and Chu Wuyin would enter the inner sect of the Wuxing Academy. Chapter 88. The two of them chatted casually for a while. The 10 arcs formed a long line as they headed south of the Academy of Wuxing. Finally, after passing through countless towering mountains and steep ridges, a huge mountain peak suddenly came into view. There were countless palaces and courtyards on the mountain peak, and blue-robed martial artists could be seen everywhere. At the center of the mountain peak was a huge group of palaces. Among them, there were more than 100 different palaces. The group of palaces was much grander than the palace of Wuxing country. Wuxing Academy was actually a superpower that transcended Wuxing country. Even the royal family of Wuxing country could not compete with Wuxing Academy. Because of this, the palaces of Wuxing Academy were much bigger than the palace of Wuxing country. It could be said that Wuxing Academy was the uncrowned king of Wuxing country. The 10 arcs came to a stop in front of a palace located halfway up the mountain. "Looks like we've arrived." Chu Fengmian observed Wuxing Academy. Wuxing Academy was located on a huge mountain peak. It was clearly divided into 4 parts. At the foot of the mountain, there were countless bustling cities and fields for spiritual herbs. These were the residences of the servants and odd jobs disciples of Wuxing Academy. Countless disciples of Wuxing Academy spent an astronomical amount of money on elixirs every day. The cities and fields at the foot of the mountain were used to grow spiritual herbs to support Wuxing Academy's daily expenses. Apart from the cultivation of the slaves, countless factions of Wuxing country would contribute large amounts of spiritual herbs to Wuxing Academy every year. These were the ways to support Wuxing Academy's expenses. It could be said that every disciple of Wuxing Academy was raised by hundreds or even thousands of people. Naturally, each of them had extraordinary strength and countless resources. Halfway up the mountain, there were many palaces and courtyards. The disciples here were freed from their heavy work and focused on martial arts. They were the outer disciples of Wuxing Academy. The outer disciples of Wuxing Academy only needed to complete some tasks assigned by Wuxing Academy every year. Then, they could cultivate freely. Therefore, all of them were progressing rapidly. At an even higher place, there were many courtyards. This was the area where the inner disciples of Wuxing Academy resided. The inner disciples of Wuxing Academy did not need to do anything. Their only goal was to cultivate. The stronger the disciple, the more likely they would become the foundation of Wuxing Academy in the future. As for the few courtyards and palaces closest to the mountain peak, they belonged to the elders of the Martial Victory Academy. Ordinary disciples were not allowed to approach them. Naturally, there was no need for them to join the inner sect. "Let's go." The location of the first test is next, Chu Wuyin said and leaped down from the ark. Chu Fengmian followed suit and jumped down from the ark. They walked into the palace. In the middle of the palace, there was a huge rock standing in the middle. This rock was engraved with countless arrays that were added to it. There were a total of 9 sections on the rock. A martial artist walked to the front and placed his hand on the rock. Suddenly, he injected spiritual energy into the rock. Thump, thump, thump. The 9 sections of the rock began to glow with red light. It only stopped when the 8th section lit up. "Level 8 Bone Tempering Realm, you passed the test." "Go ahead," an old man sitting on a chair said without lifting his eyes after glancing at the result. Chapter 89. Some of the martial artists around Chu Fengmian began to quietly discuss. Can this stone only detect the 9th level of the bone tempering realm? What about the body tempering realm? A martial artist could not help but ask. The martial artist just now was at the 8th level of the bone tempering realm, so 8 of the stones were lit up. What would happen if it was an even stronger body tempering realm martial artist? Didn't you see that the light that appeared just now was red? This is the symbol of the bone tempering realm. If it was a body tempering realm martial artist, their light would be orange. Another martial artist explained. Martial artists of different realms will show different colors. For example, the color of the Divine Sea realm martial artists is yellow. First, we use the color to determine the realm. Then, we look at the number of stones lit up to determine a martial artist's realm. However, this martial testing stone uses spiritual power and not realms. Therefore, there may be some errors, but most of the time, there won't be any problems. Hearing this, Chu Fengmian could not help but nod his head. Realms were not the only deciding factor among martial artists. For example, although Lin Maju's strength was considered top-notch among martial artists at the 7th level of the body-tempering realm, his spiritual power was only at the 6th level of the body-tempering realm. Among sword cultivators, martial artists who majored in the light sword were weaker than martial artists of the same realm. This was because they spent most of their time training their sword skills, so their strength was weaker. However, in terms of actual combat, their strength was not inferior to martial artists of the same realm. Another martial artist took the initiative to step forward. Compared to the previous person, this person did not look very confident. His face was clearly flustered. Chu Fengmian could tell that this martial artist was only at the 7th level of the bone-tempering realm. There was not much chance of passing the martial testing stones test. Thump, thump, thump. That martial artist used almost all of his spiritual power to inject into the martial testing stone. Streaks of red rocks had already lit up. When it reached the 7th stone, he finally used up all of his spiritual power and could not light up anymore. Seeing this result, countless martial artists could only shake their heads. 7th level of the bone-tempering realm. He had failed this test. A martial artist at the 7th level of the bone-tempering stage was not even qualified to become a part-time disciple of the Martial Victory Academy. The old man raised his head and said coldly when he saw the result. 7th level of the bone-tempering stage, failed. Prepare to go back. Deacon, can you make an exception for me? My cultivation level is about to break through. It would be good if you could just let me be an odd job disciple. That cultivator begged bitterly. His strength was not considered very strong. Being able to pass the ARCS assessment was already considered extremely lucky this time. If he left this time and came back tomorrow for the next assessment, he might not even be able to pass the ARC assessment. The old man raised his head. His eyes were filled with anger as he roared. Humph! Where do you think this is? This is the Wuxing Academy. Those without strength don't even have the qualifications to be a servant disciple. Hurry up and leave. If you don't leave, do you want this old man to personally send you out? The aura that erupted from the old man's body was extremely terrifying. He had reached the 8th level of the body refinement stage. Even a deacon in charge of the examination was actually at the 8th level of the body refinement stage. That cultivator's face was ghastly pale. He could not even move under the pressure of the old man's aura. A few cultivators at the side who were on good terms with this cultivator hurried forward and dragged this cultivator out. Why don't you think about where you are? Is the Wuxing Academy a place where you can bargain? Some of the cultivators could not help but sneer when they saw this scene. Without strength, even if you enter the Wuxing Academy, you'll still be a piece of trash. You can't say that. If you can enter the Wuxing Academy, even if you're just an odd job disciple, you'll have much better resources than many of the clans outside. A cultivator spoke up. However, the Wuxing Academy's standards are really high. 7th level of the bone-tempering stage doesn't even have the qualifications to be an odd job disciple. Stop talking. Hearing the discussions, the old man suddenly spoke up. The place instantly fell silent. The old man's strength was enough to intimidate everyone present. The Wuxing Academy had sent this old man to be the deacon in charge of the examination. Naturally, they wanted to intimidate everyone. Next, another warrior stepped forward and walked up to the top to test his strength. Chu Fengmian looked over. Approximately 1 out of every 2 people was not strong enough and would be eliminated. It seemed like there were less than 500 cultivators who could pass the first examination. Next, another person. This time, a skinny man walked up and attracted the attention of all the cultivators present. It's Lin Maju. It's finally the 4 geniuses' turn. Many of the cultivators present had been waiting for the 4 geniuses. The 4 of them had always been invincible among the younger generation in the extreme capital. Now, everyone wanted to see how strong the 4 geniuses were. Bang! Lin Maju walked up to the rock and hit the martial testing stone with one hand. Thump, thump, thump. Rays of red light instantly covered the entire rock at the same time. Then, another orange light began to shine. The orange light only stopped when it reached the 6th rock. 6th level of the body refining stage. What a terrifying newcomer. Is there such a terrifying monster among the newcomers this time? This person should be Lin Maju, one of the 4 geniuses among this batch of newcomers. Seeing Lin Maju's strength, many of the Wuxing Academy's outer court disciples exclaimed. 6th level of the body refining stage was considered above average among the Wuxing Academy's outer court disciples. Especially Lin Maju, who was not even 20 years old. With such terrifying strength at such a young age, he would probably be accepted as an inner court disciple by some hall master or elder after passing the examination. 6th level of the body refining stage. This result was within Chu Fengmian's expectations. Even if Lin Maju was a sword cultivator and his strength was weak, his realm was still at the 7th level of the body refining stage. It should not be a problem for him to burst out with the strength of the 6th level of the body refining stage. Young master, please move to the inner part of the palace. When the second test begins, a disciple will call for you. Chapter 90. This old man had always had a cold attitude towards these newcomers. Now that he had seen Lin Maju's strength, his face was full of smiles. Many people were surprised by how quickly he had changed his attitude. With Lin Maju's strength, it's a given that he'll enter the inner sect in this assessment. It's normal that the old man would choose to curry favor with him. Chu Fengmian thought when he saw this. The old man's strength did surpass Lin Maju's, but he was already in his 70s or 80s. If he did not have the opportunity to break through to the Divine Sea realm, his strength would have reached its limit. Lin Maju was not even 20 years old. His future was limitless. The old man was doing Lin Maju a favor at this time. When Lin Maju grew up, he would also benefit. Many of the outer disciples were already used to the old man's actions. Although Lin Maju was not a disciple of Wuxing Academy and was not allowed to enter the palace according to the rules, the old man was the invigilator of this assessment. Naturally, no one objected to his words. That's right. Why can Lin Maju enter the palace while we have to stand outside? A few martial artists who had just passed the assessment heard the old man's words and spoke with dissatisfaction. Those who had passed the assessment had to wait outside for the first assessment to end before they could participate in the second assessment. Lin Maju, on the other hand, had directly entered the palace to rest quietly. This difference in treatment naturally made them unhappy. If your strength can reach the 5th level of the body refining realm or above, you can naturally enter the palace to rest. The old man glanced at the martial artists and said coldly. Martial artists who have passed the assessment, leave quickly and wait outside the palace. I'm not convinced. There's no such rule in this assessment. As the invigilator, how can you violate the rules? The martial artists said angrily. Can the rules of Wuxing Academy be violated so casually? Stupid. Chu Fengmian sneered when he heard the martial artist's words. Rules. In this world, the only rule was strength. Without strength, any rules were meaningless. These martial artists were only at the 8th or 9th level of the bone-tempering realm. What right did they have to talk about rules with the old man? Sure enough, when the old man heard the questioning of those martial artists, his face instantly turned gloomy. Just now, he had already asked those warriors to leave quickly. This was already giving them a way out. However, since these warriors didn't know what was good for them, how could he, an outer court deacon and the invigilator of this examination, be afraid of these warriors? Scram! If you continue to make a ruckus, all of you will be disqualified. The old man said coldly. Even if you are the invigilator this time, you don't have the right to disqualify us. We all passed the first exam. A warrior said angrily. He dared to confront the old man now because he felt that since he had passed the first test, there was no need for him to be afraid of the old man. He had taken the exam in front of everyone. He did not believe that the old man would really disqualify him. Good, I didn't think that this year's little fellows would be so arrogant, daring to point fingers at this old man. The old man's eyes turned cold as he pointed at the few warriors who had just spoken. You are disqualified. Piss off from the Martial Victory Institute at once. You dare? The warrior wanted to retort, but a few outer court disciples had already arrived. When they saw those cultivators, they suddenly made a move and captured the cultivators who had just spoken. They threw them out of the palace. Disturbing the peace. Next. The old man sat down calmly on his seat and spoke again. This time, the entire place was silent. No one dared to go against the old man anymore. Many people had already figured out what was going on. Even if this old man was an outer court deacon, he was still a martial artist at the 8th level of the body refinement stage. Compared to those people who could only be considered as odd jobs disciples, his status was much higher. How could the Martial Victory Institute punish this old man for a few servant disciples? Next. The examination continued. This time, a noble lady in white walked out. Its Highness Chu, her strength should be slightly stronger than Lin Maju's. Some people thought to themselves as they stretched out their hands and hit the martial testing stone. Thump, thump, thump. A red light flashed past. Following that, an orange light shot to an extremely high position in an instant. 7th level body refining realm. The orange light only stopped when it reached the 7th stone. Many outer court disciples exclaimed in surprise. The seemingly weak Chu Wuin's strength was actually stronger than Lin Maju's. She should be Chu Wuin from this batch of newcomers. She is also one of the 4 geniuses. Her strength is really terrifying. Compared to her strength, her appearance is truly terrifying. It is said that when she was still in the Martial Victory Academy, many inner disciples of the Martial Victory Academy wanted to pursue her. Now that she has come to the Martial Victory Academy, I'm afraid those people will all go crazy. Such an appearance isn't a good thing for a lady. If she doesn't have strength, I'm afraid it will cause trouble. A warrior couldn't help but speak. Appearance might not be a good thing for some ladies. Instead, it might be a disaster. After all, appearance was like a treasure. Without enough strength to protect it, it would be a disaster. Hey, you don't know? With this lady's status, I'm afraid even the inner court disciples of the Martial Victory Institute wouldn't dare to go against her. They can only pursue her. Another warrior couldn't help but speak. Otherwise, do you think those inner court geniuses would be so calm and wait? Status? Who is this lady? That warrior obviously didn't understand and hurriedly asked. Let me tell you, this lady is silence. The old man suddenly spoke and interrupted everyone's conversation. He looked at Chu Wuin and revealed a smile just like before. You go to the hall and wait for the examination to end. Okay. Chu Wuin agreed and left proudly. This Chu Wuin's status is extraordinary. Chu Fengmian thought with a smile. However, Chu Fengmian didn't care about Chu Wuin's status. Chapter 91. Chu Fengmian did not pay attention to the few martial artists who approached him. There were only a few martial artists in the 5th level of the body tempering realm who caught Chu Fengmian's attention. These people's fame was suppressed by the 4 geniuses, but their talent and strength were not bad either. Now that they had come to Wuxing Academy and had received sufficient resources, their strength would definitely improve rapidly. Next. The elder said. It's finally my turn. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. He moved his feet and walked out of the crowd. Seeing Chu Fengmian walk out, many people could not help but start discussing. It's Chu Fengmian. It's finally Chu Fengmian's turn. I wonder if Chu Fengmian's strength can surpass Chu Wuin's. After all, he defeated Chu Wang in terms of strength. some of the onlookers started discussing. Chu Fengmian placed his hand on the martial testing stone and injected a surge of spiritual energy into it. Dang, dang, dang. The red light covered all 9 rocks at an extremely fast speed. Then, it lit up with an orange light. The orange light continued forward without any pause. In an instant, it had arrived at the position of the 7th rock. 7th level of the body tempering realm? What a terrifying strength. It's actually comparable to Chu Wuin's strength. An outer sect disciple could not help but exclaim in shock. Who is he? Is he one of the 4 geniuses, Chu Wanga? Looking at Chu Fengmian, some outer sect disciples started discussing. In their opinion, only the 4 great geniuses could achieve this level of strength. No, his name is Chu Fengmian, but he's not from the family Chu. During the Arc assessment, he defeated Chu Wanga and prevented him from stepping on the Arkansas. An outer sect disciple explained. Obviously, he knew a little about what had happened in the extreme capital. He defeated Chu Wanga? There's actually such a monstrous person in this batch of newcomers? Hearing the outer sect disciples' words, many people around them gasped. Chu Wanga's strength was extremely famous in Wuxing Academy. Many people said that he could become this batch's newcomer king. However, no one expected Chu Wanga to be defeated during the Arc assessment and not even qualified to participate in the first assessment. No, look at the martial testing stone. While everyone was discussing, a voice suddenly sounded. Countless people's gazes followed the voice and looked towards the martial evaluation stone. The orange light on the martial testing stone did not stop. Instead, it lit up again. The 8th rock was also filled with bright orange. 8th level of the body refinement stage. That's impossible. How can a newcomer possess such terrifying power? Some of the outer sect disciples were in disbelief when they saw this result. The 8th level of the body refinement realm had already surpassed Chu Wuin's strength. In the outer sect, many of the true overlords of the outer sect had only reached the 8th level of the body refinement realm. However, all of them had already cultivated in Wuxing Academy. The 7th level of the body refinement realm was the limit for an ordinary newcomer. A newcomer at the 8th level of the body refinement realm was something that the Martial Victory Academy rarely encountered even once in 100 years. 8th level of the body refinement realm, could it be another Ling Tian? When the old man saw this result, he couldn't help but mutter to himself. However, after the orange light covered the 8th rock, it still did not stop. He was still sprinting towards the 9th rock. Thump! Another sound was heard. The 9th rock was also dyed in an eye-catching orange color. 9th level of the body refinement realm. How is that possible? Could it be that the martial arts evaluation stone is broken? Even Ling Tian was only at the 8th level of the body refinement realm when he participated in the entrance examination. Could it be that this kid's aptitude has surpassed Ling Tian's? When many martial artists saw this scene, their hearts could no longer be described with the word shock. The highest aptitude that the martial arts evaluation stone had seen in the past 1,000 years was a martial artist who had participated in this examination 15 years ago, Ling Tian. At that time, his examination result was only at the 8th level of the body refinement realm. However, the current Chu Fengmian had already surpassed him. One had to know that Ling Tian's aptitude was already the best in Wuxing Academy. No one could shake his position. No one would have thought that the current Chu Fengmian would actually have such terrifying aptitude. The orange light continued to shine, causing countless people to be on tenterhooks. Could it be that he's at the Divine Sea realm? It can't be. How can a kid who's not even 20 years old reach the Divine Sea realm? Many people shook their heads frantically. However, many people no longer dared to make a judgment in their hearts. Chu Fengmian was definitely a person who transcended common sense. When it neared the peak of the 9th rock, the orange glow gradually dimmed. It didn't continue to shine. This caused many warriors to heave a sigh of relief in their hearts. As expected, it's impossible for a martial artist who has reached the Divine Sea realm to appear in the entrance examination. Nonsense. It's not that easy to reach the Divine Sea Realm. Being able to reach the Divine Sea Realm is already enough to be promoted to the position of hall leader. Some martial artists couldn't help but speak. Their tone was also much more relaxed. If Chu Fengmian's strength had reached the Divine Sea Realm, they would all be ashamed. Is it impossible to achieve? Chu Fengmian heard the crowd's discussion and sneered in his heart. At the last moment, he had already retracted his spiritual energy. The strength of the 9th level of the body refinement realm was already enough to make Chu Fengmian stand out in Wuxing Academy. If Chu Fengmian had really released all his spiritual power without caring about anything else, he might have reached the 2nd or even the 3rd level of the Divine Sea Realm. After all, the Lin Mansion's first elder, a martial artist at the 3rd level of the Divine Sea Realm, was defeated by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's full strength was indeed at the Divine Sea Realm. However, it was still too dazzling to show the strength of the Divine Sea Realm this time. Chu Fengmian had to reserve some strength as a trump card. "Young master, please go to the hall and wait." The elder looked at Chu Fengmian and was speechless. He didn't expect that there would be such a monstrous genius in the examination where he was the invigilator. A person who had surpassed the current number 1 genius of Wuxing Academy, someone who had even surpassed Ling Tian. "Okay." Chu Fengmian nodded his head and walked into the hall. Lin Maju and Chu Wuyin were already waiting in the hall. Seeing Chu Fengmian enter, the two of them weren't surprised at all. "You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.